Morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Living Together Committee meeting. I'll ask Councillor O'Brien to open this here, please.
Morena tātou, mahi whakatūwhiri tēnei o tātou hui, o tira kei ngoi tātou. Tātou te tohi anuku, tātou te tohi ārang, I tupu hoko ngā pū, ngā wē, ngā more, ngā pū ki ngā wāna ngā tawira. A tēnei te kimino te rapuno I te take, I te hauru no ngā rangi tū āha. Whakaia kia ri te uhi, wero, tau mai te mauri haungi e hui.
Thank you, dear. Kia ora.
Rockatani District Council are now live streaming our council and standing committee meetings held in our Totara room within the council building. The webcast will live stream directly to council's website and YouTube channel in real time. The purpose of streaming our meetings is to provide greater access to council debate, decision making and to encourage transparency. For those members of the public here today, all care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, while remaining in the public gallery, it is understood your consent has been given if your presence is inadvertently broadcast. Please be aware that microphones in our room are sensitive to noise, so please remain quiet throughout the meeting unless asked to speak. Health and safety: in case of an emergency, please follow the building wardens or make your way to the nearest exit. The meeting point is located across the road at Peace Park behind us. Bathroom facilities are located opposite the chamber foyer entrance, the entrance off Margaret Mahi Court. Do we have any apologies? I have one from Mayor Vista, who may join online later on.
I move.
You move. Second. Councillor Paul. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Acknowledgements. Do we have any acknowledgements? Councillor Isles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to acknowledge the golden moment that we experienced just over 24 hours ago in the form of the Women's 7 Rugby. And I'd like to also acknowledge two members of that team who are very much local residents of the Whakatane District, Mahina Paul and Stacey Walker. So congratulations on behalf of all elected members and residents to those two for getting New Zealand's first gold medal of the Games. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Isles. Councillor Dukes.
Thank you, and I would like to acknowledge our wonderful silver medal effort from our awesome local boy, Hayden Wild. What an amazing race for those who saw it. Yeah, so it's lovely to have such a lovely boy from our area.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dukes. Any other acknowledgements? Later on, hopefully, when Lisa Carrington's racing.
Yes.
Public forum. Hearing submissions received from the road naming policy, and I'll invite Katerina O'Brien to come forward, please.
Chair, you've overlooked number 4, conflicts of interest.
Beg your pardon. Yes, conflicts of interest. Do any members have conflicts of interest to declare?
For you, Mr. Chair, I wouldn't call it a conflict, but
Not today.
this lovely, beautiful woman over here. Ngai Tamawera is my wife. And, two other submitters that are supposed to be here today talking to the submissions are related to me as well. So just put that out there. If they are.
We've already established that there is no conflict there for you, Councillor O'Brien. But thank you for declaring. Right. Kat, I invite you to present your submission. We'll give you 5 minutes. If you need a little bit longer, or I'll be kind to you. So fire away.
Tēnei hoki ngā kai kaunihira. Greetings to our esteemed councillors. Tēnā koutou ngā kai whakahaere me ngā kaimahi to all the managers and all the staff here. Tēnā koutou. I am here speaking on behalf of my tamawira. So my tamawira is a hapu of Ngāti Awa. Our rohe is in Titiko, like the Rangitai. So on our register we have 1,200, just over 1,200 registered on our hapu. So I'm speaking on behalf of that cohort and not as an individual. So I do have the mandate. I'm the secretary of our hapu. I'm also one of the senior advisors, and I have the mandate of our taumata to speak on their behalf. Kia ora. I also love this topic. I just so happen to have written my master's dissertation on the renaming and reclaiming of place and the importance of resurrecting cultural histories through naming. And so it is a passion of mine, hence my hapu said, go and speak for us. If you're interested, it is not on the shelves. I do have a copy if you want to come and read it. It was done some time ago, but it's still very relevant. Whakatane District Council does feature in there as part of the journey of resurrecting our culture. The why, I think you're very clever in this room. Local Government Act, Section 81. So you need to provide processes for Māori to contribute to decision making. This goes a long way to enabling that and empowering our partners, iwi, to have some participation in this process. I just want to applaud the Council for amending this policy and making it current, and for including provisions, and I guess it's through Polder's team or other experts, so miha te kia koe te rangatira. And it's quite brave in the current times that we're in to be inserting treaty clauses, so thank you Council for being courageous in this space, given the current climate. Support all the changes, and I don't have to explain the importance of Māori place names on our landscape in terms of recognising our whakapapa, our history and our cultural dynamic. Māori have suffered through, in the past, they've suffered loss of language, loss of economics, loss of life and loss of whenua. So enabling a space where they can remember the histories and for our community to remember histories can be achieved through place names. Just want to give a little example of context. So where my husband and I live, it was done through a Māori trust. We live on Motutere Place. The main road is Te Taiawatia Drive, Rangitukihi Street, and Manuera Place. Those are all names of our tupuna. So when my daughter and our mokopuna come home, they feel at home because they see the whakapapa in the street naming. So thank you, and I guess Council have played a part in ensuring that our whakapapa is visible and we have optics on it. Thank you so much. However, next to us, we have a subdivision that has a very colonial place name arrangement. Charles, Anne, Harry. That is a different whakapapa, but it is right next to us. And there's a place for that, but I think the history of our whakapapa should be more prominent. I don't have much more to say than that, but I'm happy to answer questions. And just to say that there was a supporting document that I thought was really useful, but it does need updating. When I was looking at submitting online, and I'll put that in my submission, so if you could address that. There's also some appendixes which I think perhaps shouldn't be in that document, like all the work of all the different iwi, because that gets outdated quite quickly, and that's in the appendix of the document. Apart from that, thank you very much. I appreciate and I support this council, and thank you for the opportunity to.
Thank you for that, Katarina. Any questions, any points of clarification from councillors? Councillor Poller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Morning, Katerina. Thank you for your presentation. I suppose it's about a balance, isn't it? About the balance of all cultures, really. So just how sometimes we don't quite get there, but generally we do. So thank you for that. I'd be interested to read your article, actually.
You'll have to bring a bottle of gin. Now that it's August and not July.
Thank you.
Councillor Tanzos?
Thank you. Thanks, Katarina. And I'd be really interested to read your dissertation. Is it online at all?
No, it's really exclusive.
No. Yeah, I'd be really interested to read it because I think it would really inform actually our decision making. That's probably too late for that. My question was, one of the concerns of some people has been that the process of engaging with local hapu and iwi can add delay, and particularly around, I suppose, where you've got committees that have a lot of business on, and this might be a low priority for them. How do we handle that?
That's an excellent question. And I did make some comments about I don't think you should be held to ransom on timeframes if the other party, takes years to do something. So I do think there should be a time frame, and to make all endeavour to try and meet that. It's about having the right people that can connect into the right spaces. So you have an excellent Māori team that have relationships on the ground. You have some excellent Māori councillors here. They have networks and relationships, and yourself. You have relationships. Because I think that, yes, iwi could be the conduit, but it needs to go to who are the ahika in that place where that naming is proposed. So ahika and iwi and hapu can be different if you know the connection into the ahika space. And I think that's where there could be some flexibility in approach. Otherwise, it just gets caught up in iwi processes, to be fair. And I think that gentleman next to you will know all about that. But you have excellent Māori councillors here and others getting to the right place and being really clear about this is your time frame.
Supplementary, if I may. Thank you for that. So, because I imagine that's one of the challenges for some developers who don't have those relationships. So I suppose what I hear you saying is that council absolutely has to play a role in helping to connect people to the right people.
Yes, absolutely, and I do believe that we have a conduit through a role in Te Runanga o Ngāti Awa, and that person is very well connected. It also aligns with your Whakatane District Council, and Te Runanga o Ngāti Awa have a reo rua strategy, so a bilingual signage strategy. So there's some real good complementary alignment there. And through the implementation plan, which I believe is still not quite complete, you could add in aspects of this to kind of help the process.
Thank you.
Councillor Fuller?
Just following on from your comments around time frame, Katerina, and not wanting to put you on the spot, but it would be helpful to us to hear your thoughts about what is a realistic time frame or expectation.
Can staff, what time frame was proposed? Was it 6 months?
It's been several.
I think 6 months is too long. I would say 3 months. I mean, that's 3 months. And if the other parties can try and, I was going to say fast track it, but that's probably not appropriate. Or have a streamlined process into the ahika. The people that have the pukinga, the tohunga, that have the mātauranga to give the names. What happens is it goes through different layers of perhaps the people that don't have the expertise, and that's where it gets held up. The people that have the expertise will give you options just like that.
Mr. Chair, I think just, sorry, Jeff, But what we're trying to do, I think, Katarina, is get people engaged right at the very beginning so that it evolves as the process goes rather than at the other end when then you delays.
Really good point.
Sorry to
Sorry, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, I see you've got down here a reasonable time to respond within 4 to 6 weeks.
6 weeks. I did also add in my submission, can I just add, is that I think the people that provide that mātauranga should be compensated. It shouldn't be a free service. These are tohunga that have the mātauranga and the whakapapa, and they should be adequately compensated for their time as experts.
Merriman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tēnā, ngāmihi whetako kōrero. So I think the new policy, or the review of the policy, addresses that developers should engage right at the outset of their proposal with our Māori team to get the right experts in. So with the renaming of streets, it's kind of a little bit of, puts us in a little bit of a quandary, because there are actually some challenges for people in the postal service who are living in that community already. And what would your suggestion be if there was to be a renaming of a street? How do you think it would help that community?
Well, I don't buy into don't have a name because it's too hard to pronounce. No, it's about the integrity of the name. And if you can't pronounce it, then go to some pronunciation lessons or spell it out. So I don't subscribe to that. I do think that change is always difficult. I didn't agree with the 80%. You need 80% mandate if you're going to change a road. I thought that was far too high, and I thought more qualitative assessment should be done on the reasons why, the naming of it, the history, the background, rather than a quantitative assessment, like getting 80%. I thought that was very difficult. It would be very difficult to achieve, and we don't want to do that. So I think there should be more qualitative assessment in that it should be 60%.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions? Councillor Poynton?
Tēnā koe. Thank you, Katarina, for your presentation and your submission. I just apartheid in general, do you believe that having that engagement with developers and also through council regarding the histories of names would prove to provide better relationships throughout the district or the rohe?
Absolutely. Just thinking about a tohunga who you might know, but I don't need to name, is in his suggestion of Awanui Ārangi Road, which is a rural road. That process was very insightful, and it built relationships and understanding of the place of that hapu in that area. And I think it's having those relationship champions that can have those conversations and bring our communities together to build understanding. You've got to have the right people in there.
Supplementary. So when it comes to possibly the renaming of streets or names, would that also apply for those who might be giving the history or background of that name of the road as it is, if it's a non-Māori name? Do you think it would work in that sense?
I think it's really important to acknowledge where that name came from, because it might be through those discussions that there's agreement that actually that name is appropriate. Or we've moved on and actually we need to correct and rename because of the current cultural landscape. The conversation's so important.
No further questions, so thank you very much, Katarina, for coming in, and we will deliberate during the report later in the meeting. I believe the other submitters they haven't arrived, so we'll move into confirmation of minutes. Refer page 10 on the agenda, please. Do I have a mover and a seconder that the Living Together Committee confirm the minutes of its meeting held on 6 June 2024 as a true record? Councillor Pollard, Councillor Dukes. Any discussion? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Minutes of other and community boards, also on page 10. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? I'll run the 3 community board meetings together. Minutes be received. Tānetua Community Board, 27 March 2024. Rangataiki Community Board, 29 May 2024. And Community Funding Committee, 2nd of July 2024.
Move.
Councillor Isles moves, Councillor Dennis second. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Councillor Isles.
You did say 27 March for the Tānetua.
When I read it out, I was thinking that I wonder, did I say March?
Said March.
Yes. Okay, 27 May 2024. Correction. Thank you. Moving to reports, the road naming and property addressing policy, of which the deliberations are going to be part of. Got Sarah Ellis, Lainey, Steve, I see your name's on here, is that part of it? Please refer to pages 11 to 64 on the agenda. Over to you, ladies.
Morena tātou. So this report is to present to you the submissions for the review of the road naming and property addressing policy, which was out for consultation for a month in June and July. The background to this is that the policy was adopted in 2014 and was due for review in 2019. That was delayed for various reasons that you're well aware of. And in May, you took part in a workshop to look at the policy and the recommendations from staff around the changes that could be made to that policy to bring it more in line with the strategic direction of Council, to recognise the links of iwi and hapu to their whenua, and to meet our legislative obligations, and hopefully to make the process clearer for applicants wishing to change a road name or a property address. So consultation was run, and we do have 27 submissions from the public, 3 of which hopefully you will hear today as oral submissions. We were going to propose that we would pause our paper at section 4.3, which takes us through to the summary of submissions, and then we were going to come back during the deliberations process and present to you the analysis of those submissions. But as the other oral submitters aren't here yet, we can carry on into the deliberations process if that's what you'd like to do.
Just keep going as we are.
So, as I said, there were 27 submissions, and 3 of those have requested to be heard orally. They are from page 25 onwards, and the 3 oral submitters were at the top of that appendix. The rest of the report is around the analysis of the key themes and our recommendations. We'll take it as read, and Sarah's here to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions to the team? No? Councillor Dukes?
Just following on from what Katharina said about the time frame, moving it from 3 to 6 months, just your comments and thoughts on that suggestion.
Yeah, so with that suggestion, so the 6 months was proposed as we understood that we may meet on a quarterly basis, and so that 6 months allowed for a 3-month period in case you just missed that last meeting. So that was the reason the 6 months was put there, but with the view that if it could be, if that process could be carried out within a 3-month window, that would be the ideal timeframe.
But we recommend, just to leave it as is in the 6. Leave it as is, we're not.
Up to 6 months, just to allow for that complication around timing. Yeah.
Thanks, Pat.
So, while the chairman's busy, so that 6 months, I'm a little confused about that. So are you talking that we are going to allow 6 months for iwi to come up with a name that will be suggested? Or are we talking about the whole process from the time that the person submits the naming process for the subdivision to the time it's brought for council to decide the name?
It's the entirety of that process. Page 53
Page 53.
shows in one of the submissions it has a snip of the actual process and how that 6 months covers from the application through to the whole documentation period, which includes the engagement with iwi.
So in regard to the consultation with iwi about a name, does that mean that iwi will have to make a suggestion before the final meeting? So we're not going to say, iwi, you've only got 6 weeks to come up with a name, or 3 weeks, 2 days, 3 months, 2 days. We're going to say that the process will travel through and you have that period to get a name in, or else you've missed the boat.
So the time frame sits, so it says approximately 6 months. So just to, I guess, explain to hopefully answer the question directly, is when an application comes to council to name a road or rename a road, at which point staff will put that applicant in touch with the iwi to start that engagement process. So, and through that engagement, that is there to come up with those names together and have that consultation on that. Once that engagement has been complete, then that documentation will come through to council staff, who will then prepare a paper for going to the Living Together committee or full council meeting. So we have put that as approximately 6 months to allow for iwi quarterly meetings, because that might be the only opportunity to discuss that collectively. So that's what it's there for. But I think through the submissions, what came through is that we should try and move this process along, and that's, I guess that's the intent behind it in terms of those timeframes. And there was the clause that was added, I think it's 6.2.6. Oh, sorry, Steve wants to speak.
Oh, no, you finish.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to make a suggestion afterwards.
And so that was to allow that if a process was unduly held up, there is an option to move that forward. And so that sits as that clause that was added before we went out to consultation.
I also was just going to offer a suggestion. I mean, we've consulted on a 6-month period. We've had some feedback on that specifically. And I'm just going to suggest that maybe as part of the deliberations and discussions of council, you talk about the time frame, and actually if you want to suggest it, then actually just give that direction when you're ready. Because all we've proposed is something to get the discussion started. And maybe it's better actually that the council discuss it.
I'm a bit concerned about this approximate time, or we may expand it so it doesn't start drifting on for a year or two. I mean, I guess the whole reason we're doing this now is we want to make the process clear as anything, so everyone knows that this is going to be the process and that there is a cut-off time within a couple of weeks. But
yeah, and I think actually Sarah is saying that well, approximately 6 months for that process of making an application and then getting the documentation through, which actually has a number of steps in it.
Before the council to make a decision.
Yeah, but I think actually through the discussion we might get some good feedback on timeframes of specific parts of that process, and then we can actually go away and make those amendments to the final document before it comes back to council to get approved.
Lady?
Just in response through the chair, that is that clause 6.2.6, just to be absolutely clear, that clause is designed to avoid Councillor Dennis is concerned about. So it is at your discretion if you believe there are unnecessary negative delays. So that is a protective clause for you in your decision making.
Got others in line, but did you want to
Just
speak on this?
Just a supplementary,
Yep.
which was so Councillor Aina kind of made the point that a critical thing was the person being put in touch with the right person. And what I got from her was that wasn't necessarily going to an iwi, like a runanga meeting, but it might be putting directly in touch with someone who had the mātauranga and the mandate to just suggest something, and that could be done really swiftly. So I was just testing, I suppose, our processes. Would we follow her suggestion? Because that kind of almost changes the whole time frame.
Yeah, I think that was the intention, that actually the planning team or the transport team would have the list of names.
Right.
And the developer would be given the key contact in the relevant iwi and go off and do your engagement.
Yeah, and that would be the person who's able to do it. That's good.
And the
Thank you.
policy doesn't prevent that process from happening. It has a suggested formal process, but obviously if there are other ways that it can be done more efficiently, then there's nothing.
And as you said, that's a maximum time frame. Not
Kia ora whānau. The first point that I'd like to raise is I'd like just to remind elected members this process applies to both iwi, hapu and non-Māori. At the moment what I am hearing is there's a lot of directing towards iwi. Actually whānau, this is about a process to ensure that we garner information for naming from whether you're Māori or non-Māori. So I'd just like to flag that point. The other thing is that process is my colleague Steve has identified, it has the breadth to encompass our work pressures of your meeting times and your availability to make decisions, etc. So that's the reality of the work that we work in. It also provides us the flexibility, and we have protocols for naming and for context. So to answer your question, we have a pipeline of engagement when it comes to for Ngāti Awa. It starts with the runanga. They direct us to if or they will provide the name. We leave it to their hands. It is the same for each one of our iwi, and that is the strength of the relationships that we have. It changes, just like our processes do. In some instances, they will direct us straight to the hapu and we'll have a, so we might, here's a week here to engage with, and don't forget, this is our process on them. And so we need to have enough space in that period to align with when your frequency of your living together decision-making committee, as well as space for them to respond to us. I'll take us back to that presentation that I did when we talked about the landscape of how we have to work with 29 Crown agencies. We're just one. So we need to have a little bit of fat in the system so that they can receive our request, do some own internal discussions and engagement amongst themselves, and then respond to us, and then we might get in contact with the appropriate person. I agree that there needs to be clear dates and times so that it doesn't drag on, which I'm confident that that's the decision you'll come to today. But I just wanted us to lift up and go, it's not just about iwi and hapu and its naming, it's about providing space for all members of our community to participate in it.
Well, just like to make members aware that Christopher Clark has withdrawn his verbal submission, and we've had no contact with Harry Woods, so we'll continue with questions, of which I've got 4 in line at the 5 before we go to deliberation. So, Deputy Merriman, please.
Actually, mine is in relation to deliberation rather than a point of clarity from the manager's things.
Councillor Puller.
Mr. Chair, morning ladies and team. This road naming is part of the subdivision application process, I suppose, or RMA or whatever, and so it runs in parallel. So is there thinking around that when the developer or subdivider first comes to council, talks to planners, that this would be on the top of your list? so that it kicks in rather than at that other end when things get a bit fractured.
Yeah, so in the policy, so at the time of application, you would do this in parallel. At the same time, you would start those processes at the same time.
Maybe just to add to that, I mean, I think previously when we've talked about the review of the policy, that's the process change that we'll make to ensure that it starts when the application first is known to us or is applied for. If you think through what the subdivision process entails, I mean, it's not just the consent itself, it's the implementation of that consent, and that can be, I mean, a consent can last for up to 8 years. So I think there's plenty of opportunity to manage through, you know, the road namings, if that's the outcome of the subdivision. I think what we're seeing here is the result of a situation where we haven't had that early discussion right up front when the subdivision has come in. So I think your discussion around 6 months and the like is great if it's left right to the end of the process. It starts at the start, there's plenty of time.
Councillor Tangent? Well done. Councillor Rangiaho?
So Lenny, I'm going to go to that diagram that we were looking at and with the processes, page 53A. When we've got it approximately in the 6 month in the category, but when you go to number 5, it's the approval. Is that suggesting, so when the council doesn't approve, we're going to go hoki whakamuri, go right back to...
Not necessarily right back, I would say.
Well, these, the 2 and 3 and 4 processes sitting in the 6 months. And so I suppose it brings back to supporting and it's whether it's Māori or non-Māori, the process will once again become delayed on this side, on council side, if we do not approve of the naming. But also it probably raises the awareness of the articulation and the communications between the development and side of that. I'm just concerned whether is this the current diagram that we operate now?
This went out for consultation. Yeah,
This is a new diagram.
But absolutely there would be a process of walking people through this in more depth so they would understand, because to your question, it would entirely depend on the why. If the name was not approved, it would depend on the reason for that, whether they had to start again or whether it was actually just one small amendment that needed to be made. So it would be a case by case.
Councillor Boynton?
It was just for clarity, it was just a question for that, and my apologies if you have stated it in there. How long is the current process from start to finish when it comes to finally having a name given? That's the place to answer that.
Depends, really. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, at this council, if you're looking at the diagram, currently the process in the current policy is loosely 1, 4 and 5.
Months.
No, steps 1, 4 and 5.
Steps. I was just wanting to get an idea because people are talking about the length of time, so I just wanted to gauge what currently has happened with our name process timeframes.
Louise?
Run. I can provide some comment on that. So at the moment we don't have any time frames that put a limit on the process. So to put in perspective, some road naming applications take years to get through. So this is actually a huge improvement to the current framework that we're working within.
Thank you for that context, because it seems like that, you know, the time frame of 6 months is like we've dragged it out in some sense, but actually it would make the process more efficient, not just for Māori names, but also too for other names of streets and places.
Everyone involved, and I think it was even brought up, and one of the major developers in town provided a submission along those lines, that at least it's providing a framework for everyone to work within, rather than it currently just being open-ended.
Councillor Riles, then Councillor O'Brien.
You're not finished?
No, I just saw that you may have responded to the question I had.
Oh.
I was just going to say the point that Councillor Paula raised around bringing the engagement right at the very start when the developer walks in the room, or anyone walks in the room. That is the key win out of this policy. It brings it to the front. And we've got examples where we've had names back within a week. So we do have examples of slick responses, but our policy just didn't give us the consistency to work on, didn't give us the guidance for us to go and implement the process changes required. So to your point, it absolutely is the huge benefit to start it right at the front, so that as that all other RMA and all those other tools are going through, it's working in parallel. And we've seen success in that already.
And it's hard to compare the old policy process and the new one because the processes are quite different. And the drivers.
Supplementary. Paul, you mentioned that there was a turnover week. Can you just clarify, was that when the process started at the beginning?
Actually, I don't know I don't know the process. All I know is the team received a request, we pushed it out to a particular iwi, and they came back within a week with 4 options. So there is examples of really fast turnaround, but it varies. It varies on their availability too.
Sorry, I'll jump in. In my experience, the whole idea of the process is we ask the applicant to initiate the process when they're thinking about the development, prior to them even applying for a resource consent from us. So we've had examples where names have come in with the application, and it's been through the process prior to any council involvement. So it's looking clean and neat and tidy. That's with obviously the developer or the applicant being quite willing to do that consultation and engagement right up front, through to those who are more reticent and reluctant to do it, and it's a bit of an afterthought. And I think that's where, if our discipline is no, we want to kick off that process around the road naming right at the start, it will bring everything together much better.
Thank you.
Councillor Riles.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just coming out from the other aspect of the submitters, or some of the submitters seem to have got the wrong end of the stick in thinking that we are consulting on renaming existing roads. That certainly is not the case, and it would be great to see, or to make sure that that is expressed quite clearly, that this is actually a road naming process from the onset, from the development.
Anyways?
Just make a clarification point. The policy is a road naming and renaming, but renamings are a reactive process. We're not going out trying to rename every road out there, but we do on occasion get applications for a renaming for some reason. So we still need a policy and process that supports that application. But you're right, I think there was a lot of misunderstanding when the policy went out that people thought just about every road was going to be renamed, and that's certainly not the case at all.
Okay, just a supplementary, if you go to page 60, the response from the Whakatane District Council says, "Hi Sarah, we are not consulting on renaming any existing roads in this review process." That is what's stated.
So we're setting up the process to be able to consider applications for renaming should they come into us, as opposed to promoting any through the policy.
Councillor O'Brien.
Just following up on Paul's comments about these, I guess, in a nutshell space, it's best if you, the applicant, with the support of staff who know the people to talk to, get in touch with the iwi authority. The iwi authority will then get you in touch with the people or the relevant hapu. Often, I think applicants have gone to who they think are the relevant hapu, but there are others within that space who profess to have not been consulted. So it's safer to come through those of us within the iwi authority, and we will direct you to those relevant hapu, not just the one. And we can also, like myself, currently, with a developer that's been waiting a long time. Like Katalaina said, talk to the right people so they can be your conduit, and so they can get things moving and have those relationships with relevant hapu who are not dragging the chain, but who are possibly busy. And I do agree with timeframes. It will also give those of us who are conduits of that space to say, here is the time frame. Please go and make decisions so you can make, I guess, your suggestions to both the applicant, and I'd be doing it through the staff as well. So it's, I think it's imperative that we talk with iwi authorities so they can direct you to the right people in the right places and spaces. Kia ora.
Thanks for that. No other questions? We've got no other questions. We'll move to deliberations.
I'm happy to move.
You happy to move? Councillor Fuller, second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Okay.
Just missed deliberations.
Go into deliberations.
Just
Are you happy to move the whole lot?
You've just done the vote. No, he said we'll move into deliberations.
We'll go into deliberations. Sure. Are you taking us through deliberation, or you've come up? We've all read a report. Is there really anything to discuss in deliberations? Deputy Mayor.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I did want to actually raise the point that Kasaraina said about the people selected by the hapu or the iwi to be the consultant for the road naming be remunerated. I would support that, just like when we get advice from any other consultants. So I'm not sure whether we need to have a discussion and a vote about that, or whether it just gets included into the policy.
Memory, but I think the policy talks to the applicant covers all the costs. So actually that might just be a step that the applicant pays for, and it just becomes part of the development cost. Just putting that in the mix as well.
Okay, so we wouldn't need to add it into our policy because it would be part of the resource consent applicant costs.
Yeah, it would be part of the cost of their development.
Super, thanks for that clarification.
Yeah. But actually there might be some discussion about that.
Mr. Tanzels?
Thanks for raising that. I think it's a really important point. And I suppose the question for us is that do we just leave that as a arrangement between the developer and the whoever's providing advice, or do we, because I guess we charge some fees around it, do we embed that into our fees and reimburse the developer so there's a consistent amount? And I'm not sure which would be the better approach, but if you leave, I'm just wondering if you leave it to, I mean, maybe it's not a bad thing, but if you leave it to the developer and an advisor, then it will be quite variable, I suppose.
It's something we can look into, whether or not it sits in the fees, or whether we perhaps we take that point away and we'll go and flesh it out and come back. So I'm sure there's examples where they've got a little bit more track record that can inform the best approach forward and lessons learned. Is that a good response?
If it's linked again to the resource consent process, in the current process, there is the applicant goes and engages, and yes, there's often a remuneration aspect to that we're not involved in. But that's the proviso, that's the basis for it, and that's the understanding. So I'm not sure that you need to add anything to this policy or fees and charges or anything like that. It's a separate process and it's operating now. So.
Just as an extra to that, I was just looking at our current resource consent form online, and at the moment it doesn't have any reference to road naming or to engage earlier. It says to engage with people affected, but so I don't know if this is yet to be updated or it will be updated at some point.
The web page and the information there may well be updated to refer to road naming, probably not the application form itself, because vast majority of resource consents don't involve creating a road.
Okay.
So it's an add-on.
All right, just wanted to check that we're going to update that part of our system as well. Thank you.
Councillor Eyles.
Thank you, Chair. Again, just to carry on from the conversation that Annalise added into the fact that we do have the ability to alter the name of any road. In number 3, the background, under section 319, etc., one of the council's powers in relation to roads is to name and to alter the name of any road. So could there be some sort of clarification that this is actually outside of what we're reviewing now, which it is, isn't it?
No, this policy does cover the possibility of renaming a road. So it sets out the process for doing that. What we're saying though is, I think there was a bit of a misunderstanding in some of the comments back that we were promoting changes to road names, which we're not. People tend to come to us occasionally and go through the process around whether there's merit in that or not.
Okay, so that will be made clear.
Make that clearer if it needs to be. Yeah.
Just adding to that, it's really interesting, all the phone calls and all the questions I've had is not about the naming policy, it's about the renaming policy. And a lot of the submissions about that too, and somewhere we mucked up the communications, but I guess you can't say we're not going to do that if we're requested to, but I said at a meeting last night, 98% of this is about subdividing and naming of roads, and then people got it.
So that's what
Through the chair, I just draw the committee's attention to 6.4.2 and 6.4.3 of the proposed revised policy, which says the council does not promote the changing of existing road names. And a change in road name will only be made if council consider the change will result in a clear benefit to the community. So I think you're well covered there.
As long as it's made quite clear. You have to delve deep into it to get that actual comment.
We can do that in the comms following this process.
Councillor Tanzos.
I'll just make the comment, it would have been quite helpful to have had the policy.
Yes, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. Actually, because there's a number of times when we were wanting to cross-reference what it was and what it's being proposed to, and I just assumed that that would have been included as an appendix, particularly since we're deliberating on it today.
Yes. Apologies for that. Thank you.
No other points of clarification?
Hang on, I was thinking of something else, but it was because I couldn't see it on the policy. It was about the length of characters on a road name. And because I don't have the policy, so what is it currently? 16?
23.
Oh.
16 or 15, 16.
And did we suggest something different, or were we leaving it as it is?
So what's in the principles section is that in respect of emergency services, a road name should be easy to spell and pronounce. That's the first one, and that sits in the principles section. So from the current policy, we're taking it out of the appendix and put it into the principles of the policy. And yeah, short for ease of use. And that would use the Australian and New Zealand standards, which most councils use. That's standard there.
I guess my next question to that is, if the person consulted with has a much longer name than what our principle is because of an event that happened there or the name of the ancestor, we're putting ourselves into an awkward position if we counter it. So I'm trying to think ahead of how we can mitigate that. And in the case of the recent Coastlands Acacia Lane suggestion.
The hard and fast rule about the number of characters you can have in a name was removed to give councillors more agility and flexibility around what could come to council as a recommendation. I mean, not all long names are difficult to pronounce, but actually that was being handed back to council to say, well, you guys make the decision. but it gives the developers that flexibility to put up names. But actually, they're thinking about their recommendations in the context of this sort of stuff before they provide their preferences back up to council. So the idea was take out the hard and fast rules to give the council more agility and give the developers more ability to put different things forward depending upon what comes out of their process.
I hear what you say, but I don't know if that's going to not create some conflict in the future if there's disagreement between the developer and the people being consulted with. And the whole point of reviewing the policy is to eliminate and mitigate these situations being created.
No further discussion? We'll move into the recommendations then.
You've done
Page 11.
I've already moved it.
Yep.
And
Councillor Puller second. Any debate on this?
Can I just ask one thing? So we're going to move these recommendations now. The staff going to go away and change the draft policy, and another day it's going to come back for our approval, isn't it? Because that's how the recommendation reads. Correct. Thank you.
So I read it.
I don't think we've made any changes.
Well, it does. Well, then why have staff actually said in here that they will adapt the draft policy according to some of the issues raised in the submissions?
That would be if we had,
Yeah.
if we had, say we had said we were going to change that to 60% from 80%.
Okay.
Yeah, but we haven't actually made any.
Just making it clear.
No, it's good.
It's our standard process for reviewing policy. It gives the council that opportunity to make changes after they've heard what doesn't mean that changes have to be made.
Well, if we haven't made any changes, why don't we just vote on it? I don't see the point of having another report.
Well, I wouldn't like to vote no because I haven't cited it again.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
I'd actually like to read the policy, and I'd like to read what's been taken in and taken out. And if it had today, I would have agreed.
Yes, exactly.
We've been left hanging a bit.
I'm really happy with us bringing the paper back because it's our process, but actually a couple of the notes I made to include in the paper, just so you're aware. I was going to get us to do some thinking about actually the detailed process in the paper because our process is changing a bit with this policy and that should probably be mapped out in a council paper so you can see those various steps, so a bit more clarity around the time frame. And the other that I thought we would include in the paper is just we'll put some thought into where the costs lie, because I think we do just need a little bit of time to have a think about that, and we'll come back with some thoughts on that in the paper as well.
So, really, Councillor Jukes, Councillor Puller, read those recommendations. All those in favour? Carried. How long is this bill off? Okay, we'll move to Bylaw funding program update. Steve and Bill.
Page
65.
They are
65.
pages 65 to 73. And have members got any questions of clarification on that report?
Yeah, so this is our Better Off funding program. As you recall, we've got a bunch of projects, about 5.6 million, and this is just another one of our six monthly updates on how those projects are going. And we've got most of the GMs that are involved, in fact all of them, around the table. So yeah, we're happy to take any questions that you might have on the program and how it's going.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and morning, Pearl and Steve. I can see you now, Steve. I couldn't see you before. Just on page 68, when we're looking at the collective iwi policy hub, I see what we've been funded and then what was spent to date. Didn't we have to spend all of that within a certain time frame?
We've actually got a couple of years to complete the program, and I don't know if you want to add anything, Paul, but yeah, the Collective Iwi Policy Hub, it's gotten going, yeah, it's underway, and the completion date, August 25, is that about right?
It's aligned to the spatial plan and the climate change outcomes. As it's been stated in the summary, they've onboarded the staff. The staff are engaging heavily with the 4 members of the iwi. So at the moment, it's going really, really well, and they're building the feedback to come back. So at the moment, we're on track. It was took us a bit of a lag as we identified available consultants to onboard, but they're in place now and they're doing really, really well. So
Okay. It was more about how come we haven't spent more of it in engaging, appointing those sort of people. It was didn't want it to think that it was us dragging the chain.
That's right.
Chair, page 69, I guess there's questions to Georgina with regarding the Honahapori outreach. I see we've purchased the vans. They're in the process of being kitted out, and we've spent to date 212 or nearly 213,000 of the 500,000 budget. So what's the intention with the balance of that? Is that regards operational?
So the intention with it, I might invite Tony Miriana, who is the project lead, to speak, but a lot of the balance will be spent on fitting out and then operational costs going forward.
Still on target for rollout date?
We are on target. We're going to work with the community around a program for delivery and engage with our community to help develop that program. And then I do foresee, we'll develop a program and then we'll review it, and so we'll see how that goes. So there will still be, I think, putting a hard completion date on a project like this is, it will be operational by then, but then I think we will learn as we go a little bit.
Okay. Just a supplementary, if I may, Chair. So again, will community boards be updated continually as to how that process is working through, so that they themselves are au fait with the actual intentions of the service?
Kia ora, Councillor. Yes, just to go back one, the next steps is around, there are teams that are actually identifying the resources that are required to actually reach out to our communities. So the teams are prioritising their lists. There's a ramp that we need to install into both vans, and that's about ensuring that health and safety, and to be able to load and unload these vans safely and easily. We've already, since we've had the vans have actually been used by our exhibitions team. They've actually gone to pick up artworks and returned, and actually for installation and opening of exhibitions. Our tourism and events team have actually already used the vans, and so we're actually already testing and trialling how we can prepare for the next steps, which is why that the ramps, the resourcing, the hardware, the connectivity, with regards to having Wi-Fi, and for our communities to have access to digital services while we're out in our communities. And if an event happens, sort of happens, then these vans will also be utilised to support our communities and to connect with people outside of those areas. So there's a lot to do, including the graphic design, but engagement is the next bit that we're really looking forward to, as Georgina has mentioned, to inform the services themselves, and that's actually planned for the month of during August. So we are getting a questionnaire ready, and then our teams will actually be going out probably late August. Before the holidays, we can do that.
It's good news, but I mean, as I said earlier, it would be nice that communication is relayed through the community boards, because a lot of the community board members are those people that are going to have direct contact with the people that will probably be accessing the service once it gets rolled out. So, thank you.
We will engage with community boards, Councillor.
Councillor Dennis.
Thank you. It's really interesting hearing what you're saying, Tanya Mediana, about the how you're using it, and I like the idea you haven't jumped in straight away and fitted them out, you've actually trialled it first. So in the regard to the ramps and being able to get the equipment on, are you using wheeled pods, are you? So at the moment?
So at the moment, actually it's staff manpower and wheel trolleys. So that's what we're using at the moment. And so the ramps will assist staff to actually load and unload, make that easier and safer. Because there we could have anything from very large objects to just small boxes. So we just want to accommodate the worst case scenarios.
And so by saying that, are you meaning that you'd be able to load the fragile artefacts and box it and that before you actually try and trip over the step leading to the van? In regard to that, and also your other statement, I was very heartened by saying that because you'll be using wheeled containers, etc., that in terms of emergency you'd be able to, and it sounds like you're crossing over to several different departments, which actually is really beneficial, and I think that's excellent. And I know that, like in Foreign Emergency New Zealand, all that, they have a truck in Tauranga where it's a pod system. And so depending on what sort of event you go, they load different pods on it. So it sounds like we're going the same way with this, which is very heartening because it actually makes it more efficient and better use of our money. So well done. Thank you.
Councillor Isles.
Page 70, the active whakatane to Edgecombe to Thornton Awa Trail. I see there that the scheduled to begin literally today on the 1st of August. And I'm just asking, are we still having, or how is the conversations going with the private landowners on the stage where this has to cross over public property?
Yeah, the conversations are still progressing and going quite well. We're down to 2 that we're working closely with, and one has said that as long as they can be satisfied that the activities on the orchard, the spraying, is not going to affect people cycling past, that they'll be comfortable. So we've just been working with the industry body on that to understand the requirements, and we've got a meeting coming up with him. And the other one is we're still working with as well. They've got some concerns, and they actually own, somehow they own the property that goes right down, so there's not a dock bit on the bank. And I think they're largely waiting to see what the other orchardist does first. So yeah, those conversations are going really well, and we've broken it into 4 phases. Phases 1 and 2, so the 2 ends are sort of underway, and it's just the middle bit that goes through around where the orchardists are. But we also have some alternatives if we're still struggling. But yeah, just by having the conversations, we're starting to get there.
Good luck.
Supplementary.
Not to that one.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I've got 2 there. The first one is page 70, the Eastern Bay Planning Spatial Plan. So this is complete, but councillors have still not received a copy of what it looks like.
This was simply a contribution to help accelerate the program, and so that was spent quite quickly, that money. But the social plan, of course, is still in development. So yes, it's helped to bring things forward, but it's certainly not, it wasn't funding to deliver the spatial plan. They've got other funding as well. So August 2025 is still the date to have the spatial plan complete.
Okay, although we have seen the sub-regional, we haven't seen the sub-regional one either, which was complete with the Toy EDA funding.
So that's the economic development strategy work, which is separate, but will feed into the spatial plan.
Okay. All right, thank you. And my second one was about the natural hazard resilience. So this is on page 68. Just where it says down there in that last sentence, procurement's underway in collaboration, resources acquired, provide comprehensive logistics services. Can we just have some clarity on what are those things? That's a very long sentence.
Sure. So essentially what we're doing is purchasing some equipment that will sit in 3 containers. It's going to be in particular locations where people have to evacuate to. We'll go to those places, and it will provide some basic resources, shelter, usually some cooking facilities if required for a short time period. That's what that sentence actually means.
And where are the locations?
Still being worked out. Higher ground, basically, above around Whakatane and Hoki.
Thank you.
Councillor Boynton.
Oh, kia ora, thank you. I did have 2, but actually Leslie has covered one of them. My first one was just on page 69. It was around Hono Hapori and around the outreach. And I just wanted to ask if there was support also, considerations being given to the youth, because we do have some of our members who are in Murupara and trying to support those in rural areas to also be a part of youth council activities, and if the Hono Hapuri is part of being able to support those. Either transport or and being able to engage with them in events and part of supporting them with events. I just wanted to know if that's part of the plan.
Councillor. So there's a strong connection for us working with our health providers, any community event and any community group that requires that engagement, we would be happy to support. And whether that's going to attend market days or community open information days, there will be one van that will be based to actually serve the southern area of our district. So Murupara and the surrounding areas will actually have a van in their particular area. And if there's an opportunity for staff to actually go and support in those areas and vice versa, then we will look for those opportunities to do that.
I just following on from that, I do realise that there is sort of a fund available for those, particularly for youth who may need to come in for youth council events or travel. Is there an option of those vehicles being utilised to transport youth to particular events that may be in Whakatane?
Thank you for clarification. The vans themselves have come with no seating in the back, so they are designed specifically for transporting services and equipment. So unfortunately the transporting is one of the options we have not included in the service delivery.
Thank you for the clarity. I do understand that quite a long while ago that when they were looking at innovation of streets and that there had been feedback from the community that looked at having a type of vehicle or van or support that would go and support events. So it's really great to see that something like this is available. But yeah, I do want to look into those other barriers that some of our community have, particularly when it's a council initiative to try and support our youth, and there are transport issues. Thank you.
You can pick that one up, Councillor Boynton, because obviously we do have a number of staff who do travel out to Murupara for various reasons between our various departments. So I know we send around emails saying, is anyone going out to Murupara, wants stuff delivered out there, so let's pick that one up further. But as Tangi Miriana said, it's the main purpose of Hono Hapuri is taking our services to the people of our district, and it's the transportation focus.
Thank you.
Councillor Isles, were you wanting to comment on that?
Yeah, I just wish to add supplementary to that, Mr Chair. The trust that I chair, the Waka Eastern Bay Community Transport, we are very much aware of the isolation of youth and getting into Whakatane or getting home from Whakatane to the various outlying reaches. So that is a service that we are providing, and I'm happy to provide more detail on that so you can connect with our Director Renee Luber to get the exact lowdown as to how that can be implemented. It is something that we're very much aware of, that the lack of public transport and the accessibility of getting the youth to and from these events.
Councillor Dennis.
Thank you. Just on page 69 under the CCTV upgrade in the last paragraph talks about a radio system being implemented to enable the Auckland monitoring team to communicate directly with the police in their cars. Now, I know that was a bit of a hiccup to start with, and that it actually had to be submitted through to the police headquarters in Wellington for permission for police in Auckland to talk to police down here. Has that been does that saying that that's been resolved?
Do you know, Steve?
Sorry. Sorry, Councillor Dennis, I got asked a question.
So in regard to that last paragraph on the CCTV upgrade where it talks about the radio system being implemented to allow the monitoring team to talk to the police in their cars, the hiccup was that the police didn't let us to do that to start with, except by cell phone. Has that now been resolved?
It has now been resolved. I think it was just last week. We got clarification that, the police will have done that or are doing it. It took about, it went into the system, it took about 3 months. To work through the police, and but it's all been resolved. Which is great news, because now they can contact police directly. It's awesome.
So, because I know that the police have just stunted how well it's been working up till then, and that was just going to be the icebreaker. It just didn't make it. So,
and I kind of hope it actually becomes a bit of a pilot for the rest of New Zealand, because the rest of New Zealand's also got these.
Thank you.
No other questions or clarification? Someone like to move that the Living Together Committee receive the Better Off Funding Program update? Councillor Dennis, Councillor O'Brien. Any discussion? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. We'll break for 2 till 10:30. Yep, almost 10. Okay, welcome back everyone, and welcome to Mayor Victor, who's come online. So, move on to 7.3, approval of public spaces in Freedom Camping Bylaw for public consultation. Over to you.
So as you know, this paper is requesting for your approval to take the 2 proposed new bylaws to consultation. Background is that the review was initiated due to a change in central government legislation around freedom camping. The consolidated bylaw, the public places bylaw, was due to be reviewed by the end of next year anyway, so it was timely to commence this review slightly early to align with that new legislation. The key proposals are to separate out the public places bylaw as a new standalone bylaw, and then to have an additional separate bylaw for freedom camping. And within the first of those, within the new public places bylaw, the key proposals are to include a provision to prohibit the lighting of fires without prior written permission of council, and removing rules relating to the numbering of properties, as that is outside the scope of the relevant act. Within the second of the 2 proposed new bylaws, the freedom camping bylaw, we're proposing to increase the number of nights you can stay at a single freedom camping spot from 2 to 3 within a 4-week window, and that is to allow people to stay for a long weekend, which is often when people do choose to freedom camp. So that just helps people enjoy our district. There are some new prohibited restricted areas proposed within the freedom camping bylaw, and we would like to consult on this from the 12th of August. So quite soon. This is only for consultation, so we're not asking you to make any decisions around the 2 proposed bylaws, but to be comfortable that they're ready to go out to the public.
Thank you for that. And I should have said that they're on pages 74 to 158 on the agenda, but got any questions of clarification? Councillor Puller?
Chair, I thought I read somewhere that homeless people are exempt, is it? So what's the plan to deal with that?
So the enforcement of, the management of homelessness and our approach to responding doesn't sit within our team, so I'd need to go and ask the compliance and regulations team to respond to that question, unless David wants to speak to it.
Ian has a...
Oh, okay.
Ian's online.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's the answer we've given before. We're dealing with it on a case-by-case basis. We've got the community partnerships team, some people from Georgina's team, and some people from David's team. We're also working almost on a daily basis with Wairiki Whānau Mentoring, and as issues emerge, we tend to deal with them. The difficulty is, as we've talked about a million times, it's not actually illegal to be homeless. It's when someone's caused an offence or being offensive is that it becomes a crime. So we do involve police when we need to as well. Ian is heavily involved in this as part of that internal working group. He might have more to add.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, everyone's covered it all. So we do work with, we refer them to, social agencies to actually, and work with them to actually move them on.
Thank you.
So just supplementary to that, it is a form of camping, I suppose, though, isn't it, when they're living in their cars? But we can't do anything about it.
Yeah, thank you. Just on the same topic. So it's not illegal to be homeless, but we are now, and stay in your car, but now we're adjusting our bylaw locations where a lot of them locate to. So are you saying we still can't, like down the Heads, for example? There's a collective that have been moved on, that moved back, and so now that's prohibited. So they can't do that. So do we have any law to be able to remove them?
So do we have any...
Is there no means that we can remove them if they still choose to locate an overnight in a restricted area?
If they're camping, you can. In terms of the reserves, Reserves Act, we can move them on, and that's generally how we do it. But certainly under the Freedom Camping Act, we can't do that, or freedom camping legislation. So, the heads for an example, what we do is just work with people there, and we just let them know that they're not allowed to camp on reserves. It's part of the reserves bylaws as well that you may not camp on a reserve. So we use that that mechanism to actually move them on.
Any further points of clarification? Councillor Dennis?
Yeah, just a couple of them, and both on page 76. So if we go down the prohibiting of lighting and fires, you're talking about including a provision that restricts the lighting of or leaving fires in a manner that poses a danger to people or property. Will that include on the beaches?
So we do have a beaches bylaw that says that you can't light any vegetation, but you also can't leave a fire alone, or if it poses a risk to health and safety or it's a nuisance. So on the beach you can have a bonfire as long as it meets those conditions, but in a public place, like on the side of the road or on council land, we're saying no lighting of fires, unless it's a cultural fire, a cultural cooking fire or a barbecue.
So beaches, fires on beaches are a different bylaw to this one.
I can't talk about it, that's fine. Okay, maybe I might catch up on that one another day. So in that, you're saying that excludes fires that are used for cooking, including hangi and barbecues. So any person can wander down the road down by the reef there and put a hangi down. Are you sure?
Yeah, no, they can't just they can't do that. They generally.
This says that they can.
Yeah.
Maybe you should tidy that up a bit.
76, bottom of 76. Basically, we can't have people lighting fires unless it's for cooking.
That's right. Yeah.
Is there on a reserve?
If it's on a reserve, generally what happens is that the people will approach us. They will talk to us prior to that. If it's for an event, they will get hold of us, and it'll be pre-arranged.
Food.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what?
But under in terms of the reserves bylaw, you can't just go and light a fire on any reserve.
But this is saying you can. A reserve is a public place. Oh, you could have someone. I'm just saying. I think you need to tidy this up, because someone come and argue the fact that this in this bylaw, you've just now said that any bloke, Gavin Dennis, could turn up this trailer with all his wood on it and stones and dig anywhere in town here and put a hangi down. I'm sure it wouldn't taste as nice as the experts would.
So just for clarity, the draft document that's going out for consultation says, except without the prior written permission of the council or authorised officer, a person shall not light fire in any public place. The provision shall not apply to cultural cooking fires, hangi, barbecues, meaning facts, or intended for the use of cooking or food. Emergency flares subject to the prohibitions or restrictions on the lighting of fires imposed by Fire Emergency New Zealand. So I think you raise a really valid point, Councillor Dennis. I think it's probably something for us to think about as we go through the consultation process in terms of the damage to public property if there's the requirement to dig a hole. Because I've seen quite a few portable hangis that actually sit above the ground. I kind of wonder if actually that's what people are thinking of.
I'm actually not picking on hangis. Let's pick on barbecues. One of the biggest dangers out there is someone has one of those charcoal barbecues on not on the beach, but just behind the sand dunes, and you get a coal run out from there. Many an hour, busting my guts fighting a fire behind the sand dunes because of people who do that. I think you really need to look at that closely, yourself.
So, would it be all right if we do that when we come back with our recommendations after consultation? That's a really good point.
The other one I would like you to see is that you could cross over something like that into your beach policy. One of the biggest dangers out there is the people who light a bonfire and then they just cover up the sand and they shoot through. And the damage it does to people's bare feet, like kids and all that, when they run through the lump in the sand and they end up with scalding burns, I think you really need to have a look at that one too. Okay, because, so the other one I was wanting to talk about is staff propose to remove the clause numbering of properties and buildings. We talk about a lot of our other bylaws about having concerns for emergency services and sector like that. Why would you not want them to have numbers on buildings? I mean, if they're called by someone who's a tourist in the town, they found someone having a seizure on the ground outside a shop, they don't really know what it is. They look around, they say, oh, it's number 38 on the main shopping street. You're now going to say, we don't have to put those up, and how on earth can we find them?
We have received legal advice that we will need to remove this section because it's outside of the scope of the Local Government Act and the powers that we have to create this bylaw. So, and a bylaw is about enforcing those rules. So we have our road naming and addressing policy where it has rules around that will follow the Australian New Zealand standards around how a property will be numbered and named. So for that safety reason.
So where you can't insist, you would encourage.
Yes, so it means now we can't use the Local Government Act to enforce people to number their property in that way.
Is that extremely relevant too in the rural areas? So will there be something within all our written literature that would encourage people to?
Within our road naming policy, yes.
Thank you.
Deputy Merriman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, ladies. I just actually wanted just to clarify, is hangi the cultural cooking fire, or are there other types of cultural cooking fire? Just hangi.
No, there are others as well, and potentially others that would be covered by that section in the bylaw.
They are specified in the draft.
In the policy. Okay. All right. But I'm just thinking there seems to be more allowed exceptions, which seems a bit incongruous.
Councillor Rangiaho.
So, going back to that council direction, I don't know who went out, but who went to go and sought legal advice on a proposed definition of nuisance. What is the comeback of that and how is it applied? Especially in terms of council directions, that's on page, it's to do with the cooking of the fires, so I'm just wondering whether that's part of, whether somebody's acting in a nuisance way or, you know, what was the clarity you guys got back on that?
The clarity we got on the definition of nuisance from legal was that we should retain the current definition that we have. It's common practice for this definition throughout New Zealand. I did look into it for you, Nandua. I'm sorry. And so what we've done is retain it.
You want to follow on with this?
Just quickly, I mean, we need to tidy this up because really the wording says this excludes fires that are used for cooking. And then it says including hangi and barbecues. Now you can interpret barbecues to be, you can get ourselves into trouble as to what people call a barbecue. A fire underneath a big plate, that's going to be dangerous. And this also says that it excludes fires that are used for cooking, so you can have any amount of fire and cook on it. So it's all about the interpretation. We need to really tidy that up.
To be more specific.
Yeah.
But can I just confirm, is the general agreement that actually we still want to allow people to do some smaller barbecues and things like that on the beach, you know, in there? Or,
I think we need to be clear what it is that we're trying to do here, because it feels a little bit like we're not quite sure what we're trying to achieve, and if it's just that we want people to be able to cook food, But it kind of, but then it raises a question for me: is the objective of having any restriction? What's the point of having any restriction at all? Why do we have a restriction placed at all? I'm assuming it's for safety, so that people don't present a danger. And as has been pointed out, a charcoal barbecue can present as much danger as any other fire. And so I think we need to focus on restricting what it is we're trying to restrict and the purpose of that rather than why someone's doing it. Because whether they're cooking or not cooking is actually not what's important. The importance is the fire a risk, I would have thought.
And within that, you define between like electric fire and a gas fire would be fine. It's your naked fires, which are your issues, like your charcoal. So as you said, if you had a electric hangi or a gas fired hangi, that would probably be okay. You'd need to check with Bez, but you know, it's just that charcoal or the wood burning and things like that is a danger because they let off sparks, the wind blows, things like that.
Okay, so I think what we're hearing is being specific and also some thought around the size or scale. Because actually, yeah, people could take a quite liberal approach to it.
Victor, welcome.
Yeah, well, that was actually the question I wanted to ask. I mean, any kind of open flame, whether you're cooking or doing something else, they probably pose the same level of risk anyway, so it does need to be looked at.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Jukes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I agree. I think we need to be clear on what it is we're actually trying to achieve. Also, I'd like to support what Councillor Dennis said in regards to looking at the beaches bylaw. I used to live on Pahurikawa Ave, and every day after New Year's Eve, you'd go down and there would be dozens of fires that have been lit for New Year's Eve, and they're all been left burning with nobody there, and they've been built very close to the grass, and the grasses, the reedy grasses, not normal grass, and they do pose a significant danger. And I'm actually amazed that nothing has actually, happened already. I know that the property owners along the beachfront do get very worried about it, and they do have significant issues with the fire, the smoke and everything coming into their houses. So I do think we need to do something, because it would be so easy in the dry summer for those grasses to catch fire. So I think when we look at the beaches bylaw, I appreciate it comes under that one, not this one. I think we do need to, review it at some point. So
I've just checked, it's not under review until early 28, so we could try and bring that forward.
Maybe it would be
how that could be done.
So you're talking to each other.
yeah, I think so. I think there would make sense to have them a bit more consistently aligned. So just supporting Councillor Dennis.
Councillor Puller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess we need to be conscious that with any of these bylaws that they're enforceable as well, of course, and clear to their intention. Did I hear right that you're going to perhaps review what Councillor Dennis was mentioning? You're going to do that before it goes out to consultation? Or after?
That was the intention of my previous question. So we've got a choice. We can delay the consultation and we can go and look at that more deeply now, or we can include that in what we bring back to you for your deliberations, which would probably be our preferred way of dealing with that, because the community might also pick up some of the points that you're making, and it'd be good to have their consideration, and then we can bring it all back at once. But that's your decision to make.
Do you think it would be better to have it clearer before it goes out, so that we're telling the right story?
That definitely could be. So that's your decision, really. Would you like us to go away and come back to you with a further request to go for consultation, or shall we go out and then bring it back alongside all of that?
Councillor Boynton.
Thank you for your mahi. In presentation, some of the questions that I had have already been asked, and I'm just picking up from Councillor Puller around the monitoring. Has a cost analysis been done over the whole policy in terms of what it would take to do the monitoring over this bylaw? You know, one of the things I picked up on is that because the new law requires campers to have a fixed toilet, would they not use the loophole of saying I'm homeless because I don't have a fixed toilet to bypass? And who goes around monitoring to check on these campers to see if they have a fixed toilet? You know, would the changes in this overall policy increase our monitoring costs? What is the cost analysis that's being done?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To date, the way we've been managing it is through ambassadors, you know, over our busy periods. So over Christmas, into January, we actually, either a student or the last 2 seasons, we've actually used our security company as ambassadors. To actually go out there and educate people to the changes which are coming in through the legislation. We do also have security going out there on a regular basis just to do checks, security checks of it, and at the same time they do just keep an eye on what's on the number of vehicles. So that's how we're currently doing it at the moment. So.
It is supplementary.
We'll continue to do that in the future.
Okay, supplementary. So is the security company or that we use, is that already a current contract or would that be an increased contract?
It's a current contract. Yeah.
Okay. Just a second question was just on, sorry, I did have the number, but it was relating to the iwi lands, and has there been a analysis done over all the settlements to check on reserves that may currently be out of date of land that's been returned to iwi?
We did work with both Michelle Hingston and the GIS team to ensure that there was no other land included, just those 2 areas that were impacted.
Okay, so that was throughout our whole district. Okay, that's good to know. One final one, and it was overall, in your opinion and the changes, do you believe that the changes that are being made will create a safer environment for Freedom Campers, but also benefits to our district?
I don't think safety has really been an issue in our district when it comes to freedom camping. It's certainly, as I said, it won't change that at all. I don't believe. We have designated sites where people stay. Sorry, could you just repeat the second one?
It was just really wanting to be confident that the changes in the bylaw will make things safer overall, whether you're a freedom camper, whether you're a resident, whether you're a business, and that there will be increased benefits to that, whether that's economically because you have freedom, you have campers that are staying here longer. I just wanted to grasp your opinion because in the rationale that kōrero has been given. So I suppose overall and all changes, I just wanted to get a solid, is this setting out to ensure safety and increase benefits for our district?
Yes, I think for any freedom camping or any visitors coming into the district, there is an economic benefit, and I think the Motor Caravan Association has actually done some work on that in terms of the benefits which these travellers bring to the district or to the towns. And I think moving forward, it's by us imposing restrictions in terms of the length that people can stay, I think it's providing opportunities for for other people to come in as well. So.
Through the chair, specifically on this freedom camping bylaw, we actually spent considerable time on Friday looking at it to see how it does align with the strategic objectives that you've set. And in terms of the economic benefit, the safety, the protections for Māori to ensure that their lands are, kept for returning whānau and so on. We looked at a lot of those different kind of strategic priorities, and personally I'm really satisfied that actually by making this freedom campaign bylaw separate and by having much more clarity for people and communicating that, it will actually make things better for the district, because people will know what they're allowed to do, they'll know that they are welcome here, and that they will contribute. So we actually spent quite considerable time on that, and definitely I think we were all satisfied by that.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien, did you still, no, you spoke. Mayor Victor.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to come back to the homelessness issue in general and ask staff if they think that our currently we have an adequate solution for homelessness. And if the answer is no, then I suggest we do a bit of brainstorming and come up with a good strategy for dealing with it. Because it's an important issue not just for the homeless, but also for people who are adequately housed, for the rest of the community. Thank you. Yes, so have we an adequate solution at the moment?
Request noted.
Can we just note that? I mean, this bylaw doesn't deal with homelessness. It's a completely separate topic.
Okay.
And I think
yeah,
if we need to deal with it,
it's separate.
Okay. Thanks for that. Councillor Tanzer.
Thank you. I have three things. The first one in terms of guidance as to whether we should go out as is or do some work first. My thinking is that we should go out now, but we could ask a specific question around that, indicate to the community that this is something that we're grappling with and invite some response. So I think that will be helpful when we come back to discuss it. We'll actually have some input from the community at that stage, rather than just talking off our own personal experience. So that's my view on that. I know it's not before us today, but the idea of putting more restrictions on fires on beaches, I'd be resistant to putting rules around that too much. I think some guidance around how to do that more safely might be helpful, but I think fires on the beach are a classic Kiwi tradition. I don't think we should be getting in the way of that. My third one is on freedom camping and looking at 4.2.4, which is on page 78. It comes back to something I've raised before, which is, to me, it doesn't make sense to be requiring vehicles to be certified self-contained when parking in places where there are taps and toilets, because self-containment is only important where you don't have those facilities. And I know that staff have taken account of that and have said they've considered the impacts on infrastructure, potential enforcement issues, and no additional sites have been considered appropriate. And I just wanted to push back on that, because I would have thought, there's 3 sites around town I would have thought of, and I don't know about the wider district, but at West End there's toilets and showers, and there's an area there that was reserved for freedom camping, but it'll be self-contained vehicles only. That doesn't make sense to me. At the skate park is another one. There's not showers, but there's toilets, and toilets will be the main thing. And at Marae Torta as well, there's toilets and taps. So I would argue that those 3 places should not be for self-contained vehicles, but they should be freedom camping for other vehicles as well.
Just a point, if I may, Mr. Chair. The toilets aren't open 24/7, though, are they? A lot of them closed overnight time, is that wrong?
Yes.
Which is why we decided not to do that.
Why wouldn't they be open to people?
Sleeping in.
Okay. Any further points, clarification, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, I do. It's a little bit different topic, but on page 108, and it's talking about parking on grass verges and berms. And, there's an increase of long-term people parking and sometimes sleeping in their cars out on berms and public places on streets. So I was just wondering whether we needed to add in a time frame on there, that they can't park longer than 5 days, because neighbours do comment when they see camper vans and motorhomes parking full-time outside their homes in the public part of the road and on the footpath.
And my understanding is that under this provision you wouldn't be allowed to park on the grass verge, so
It's a compliance thing more than
Yeah.
anything.
yeah.
It reads as without the prior written permission of council, you can't do it.
Okay, so that's a different issue, but one that the compliance team needs to look at. Thank you.
Are there further points of clarification? Someone like the recommendations on page 74? Someone like to move and second? Councillor Dennis, Councillor Puller. Any discussion? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Holly and Laney, and Ian, and David. We move on to draft Whakatane District Tree Strategy. Pages 159 to 202. And welcome to Kayla. Ian, you'd like to take us through, please?
I can start. The purpose of the paper, much like the previous paper, is providing you with a copy of our proposed draft Whakatane District Tree Strategy, Ngā Taonga a Tāne, and seeking your approval to release the strategy for public consultation. The strategy is mainly focused on trees in our urban environment, so our amenity trees in our urban environment.
Questions, clarification, Councillor Oles?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the strategy that you put forward. I see there's no content in there regards noxious trees, and if it's a little bit like the road naming policy, you're sure as hell you're going to get submissions requesting the removal of privet, which has been an ongoing issue over many, many years, especially that growing on the escarpment and also on private property. It becomes an issue that council have had to deal with in some shape, manner or form. Also the palms that have been something that have been sort of objected by especially how far have we got into removing them from within our tree landscape, and is there any thought in including something like that in the document to go out for consultation, that those are sort of trees that we do not encourage? And of course you can go further down the chain to agapanthus and what have you.
Thank you. A lot is covered in the district tree policy, which is also going out, that we'll to you today. That really goes through what types of trees we'd be looking to plant in the future and what we'd be looking to remove. Trees that are noxious, like ones we don't want, like a privet going forward, aren't encouraged to be planted. And we have a tree species list within the policy as well, which are trees that we already know are good for planting, that we'd want to plant going forward. Your comment on palms, there's quite a number still protected under the district plan. Palms aren't something that we'd be looking to plant in the future for new plantings, but we also wouldn't remove trees unless there was a lot of interest in removing.
Again, I guess it would have been nice if we did actually have that policy to refer back to during the process of this debate. Thank you.
Yeah, and can I just, is it also covered under pest management strategy?
Yes, and I was just going to add to that. So we, we follow the guidelines of regional council in terms of managing pest problems and diseases as well. So if it's, if we have to remove it, we remove it. And we are aware of other species like the palms, and we are systematically removing palms as well. As and when we get a chance to remove them. But, there's so many around at the moment that we can't just go out and take them all out.
Supplementary, if I may. How far have we progressed this, again, through community boards into the various wards across the district? I know you've had a conversation with me regards the Taniatua community. Have we gone out across the other community boards to see what sort of a support this initiative would have?
We're looking to go out for formal consultation now, so that's what we're requesting from you, is that we go out and ask the community what they think regarding this strategy. The trees that I put forward to you in the Taniatua Community Board were specific for this year's planting that we're doing, and so that's the reason that went out to the Taniatua Community Board.
Councillor Fuller.
Mr Chair, trees are great. Get to a end of life at some stage, and more so on private property. So I wasn't sure that I saw anywhere that you could actually have a discussion about removing a tree, huge tree, and replanting. And I've been in discussions before, and the arborists are quite precious about all that, and I can understand that. But sometimes these trees are so huge that they're out of place in the residential area. So is there somewhere in the policy, I didn't see it, and apologies if I've missed it, but is there scope to be able to have that discussion and let's reach a compromise?
Yeah, thanks Councillor Fuller. There is within the policy other reasons that we consider removal. Just a tree being large isn't a good enough reason for removal, but if there's significant risk to health and safety and other things that would be considered, there's quite a number of reasons why a tree would be removed, and that's discussed within the policy, but there's definitely space there for the discussion to be had with council and for removal to be undertaken if required.
I'll just add to that, Councillor Fuller, you're talking in terms of private property? Yes. We don't actually, council has no jurisdiction in terms of private, we're doing anything in private property. So we're happy to advise people and, have a chat with people, but in terms of the actual removal, it's got nothing to do with
some of the trees protected.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant trees on buildings. Protected trees under the district plan. There can be management undertaken as a permitted activity, but significant branch removal and the removal of the tree, you have to apply for a resource consent to be able to undertake that work.
Thank you.
Councillor Dennis.
In regard to the liquid amber trees, which cause quite a problem in a lot of areas, especially and that I know of in Edgecombe, the leaves at a certain time in autumn fall and block up gutters and masses and stormwater drains, etc. like that. A lot of them on our verges that we've planted with good intentions, which are lovely shade trees. Is there a process where we're slowly replacing those because they cause flooding in people's sections, etc.? I know down off Main Street in Edgecombe, some of the residents down there, every time it rains, they're out there in the middle of the filthy weather in the middle of the night with rakes trying to clear stormwater drains because of the amount of leaves. And I know that in Te Teko at Evers Park, that the leaves from those trees were wide-leafed. The ones that were destroying the asphalt on the tennis courts. Have we got a program for replacing those?
So, Chair, we don't have a program for replacing large trees like that at the moment, but part of the strategy is to look at succession planning as well. So when a tree gets to to a certain age or it's outgrown its useful life, then we have a program in place. But what we do at the moment is we address trees on an individual basis. So we'll try and manage the issue as best we can. For example, the trees in Edgecombe that you mentioned in Main Street, we had crown reductions done on that, so it's about a 25% crown reduction on those trees to reduce the actual amount of leaf drop. And what will happen in a few years' time, we'll go back and we'll reduce them by 25% again, and then slowly bring that size of the tree down. And the other thing is the transportation team do also have programs where they increase the sweeping, the road sweeping in areas where we experience problems with leaf drop.
Some of those side streets off Main Street heading towards Te Teko. Thank you very much.
Deputy Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Ian and Michaela. Welcome to the table. It's kind of like a two-part question. First of all, I didn't realise what an interesting report this would be in terms of the strategy. It's a bit like the audible bird scaring devices. So thank you, and you've really presented inside the strategy lots of great information. I'm looking on page 196 of exotic versus native tree distribution per community, and you see that the majority of our outlying communities have got more exotic rather than native. And then when I go to page 198 and I see tree provision per population on those same communities, again our outlying communities disproportionately have less trees. Good news is that there's money in the budget as per page 164 going forward. Are those the sorts of things that are going to be addressed, or that's just across the spectrum that you've got budgets in the long-term plan to do that?
Absolutely, that's what this is about. It's about addressing the inequity between Whakatane and the rural communities. And we want to get all the rural communities start improving the canopy cover out there.
Okay. I think that following on from Councillor Isles, getting that community and the community board's involvement, because this is a really great or not great read for them to help provide feedback. So thank you.
If I may just add on to that, as a result of this data that we got quite a few years ago, we've also noticed that Tane Atua had significantly less trees per person and not many natives. So in the past few years we've really put a lot of effort into planting, just now that we know about it. And so we've already been able to make some changes to the way we plant every year in order to make those stats better.
Super, thanks.
Councillor Rangiaho.
Hey guys. So, in terms of removals happening, and thanks Leslie around the exotic trees, because over Murupara a lot of those trees are quite old, but a lot of those trees are also grown into the infrastructure that is actually lifted up, and that's on our council footpath. Now with our wet weather events, and things keep blowing over, and we can't get the services into Murupara, we do take action in our own hands where we have been prevented to stop what we're doing. There's a process, but how does this strategy help us to address those rātou, those old trees that are actually going to play on our infrastructure, and we're still doing work on our infrastructures up in Murupara at the same time? What is this strategy looking for our community over there? Because a lot of our whānau who live on Murupara, you know when those wind blows and they see this thing, they know you can physically see it out of that footpath, but it just needs to take a gust at kataka mai, I don't know what out there, but it's going to drop on their homes. So how is that measured to, there's enough RFS that's been logged, and yet we still don't see actions inside of that. So how can we probably improve on responding to some of those things?
So we do, if you log an RFS, we will go out and actually have a look at, and inspect the tree. And if it's a safety issue, we can, engage the services of an external arborist, consulting arborist to give us an independent report on the safety of the tree. If it's causing significant damage to infrastructure and that, we will certainly look at that internally as well. And we have taken trees out for those purposes, where they're in the way of infrastructure. In town just recently down P Street, a number of trees came out with that redevelopment there as well, because they were interfering with the Curban channel. And then going forward as well, the strategy does address those issues. So we will take, we will certainly have a look at what services are in that area, and we won't plant where there are services. A lot of the issues which we're having are historical, as you pointed out, they're really old trees, and we're just slowly working through those. But certainly if it's a safety issue, we'll address it, straight away.
But I think inside of that, it's also strengthening the relationship with Ngāti Manawa as well, because they have a great crew out there, and sometimes we just get on with things. That's what resilience looks like for our small communities. But, you know, we have a process as well, and how can we support our communities inside of it?
We will continue to work with communities as we go forward.
Councillor Isles?
Thank you, Chair. It's amazing how 30 years on, how the initiative has changed. And one of my previous councillors, Councillor Eileen Bell, was responsible for having those exotic trees planted both in the east and the west approach into the Waimea Township. They were planted, unfortunately, on private land, but they are now of such maturity that we're having issues galore from both stock trucks and milk tankers with the overhang, especially of the London planes coming in on the west approach. How do we manage that? Because in theory they're on private property, but there is that clause within the bylaw with regard to overhanging. Who bears the expense?
In those cases, if they're on private property, unfortunately the landowner is responsible. Unless there's a firm agreement in place that we can actually refer to. But yeah, in certain cases, you know, if we could work with the landowner as well to see how we could, you know, how we could help them out as well with that. Yeah, I think it's on a case by case basis.
Thank you. Councillor Boynton?
Oh, kia ora, and thank you for your mahi and for your report. I'm just picking up on the food sovereignty part that was in the report, and I was glad to see the feedback around those who've been asking about having fruit trees planted, because I know for quite a few years people have been asking why don't we have fruit trees in the streets or planted, and it did identify that the council has said historically that's not something that they would do because of the high maintenance that's involved. But I did see a way forward in your strategy that looked at working with community groups to be able to plant fruit trees. Would that be more formalised? Like, is there opportunity for groups or a program in which that would be made known to the community that they can be supported to obtain fruit trees if they had some form of community planting? Would that also apply to possibly other groups like schools or marae or, you know, any other sort of community groups or centres? And would that allow those trees to be planted on possibly council verges or council areas?
Thank you. We've had a lot of really good community gardens going in recently that have been really successful, such as our Tapu Community Garden. When groups want to come forward to council and establish one of these gardens, they can come to council staff and have a discussion about it. We've recently provided community garden guidelines, which is a document available on the Whakatane District Council website that'll guide any kind of group through the process of how to establish that and make that happen. We find that is a really good way in order to be able to have fruit trees grow successfully, because the community are really involved in the maintenance and pruning of those trees as well as the collection of the fruit, whereas when fruit trees are planted on fruit trees, because they've been modified over such a long time, they're genetically made and so that they require a lot of pruning to establish such a lot of fruit, and so they do require quite a lot of maintenance, and it's too much for just our council staff to be able to undertake. So that support from the community is really important to make sure that the fruit trees grow well. So that's why we're saying that we'd like to have them primarily in community gardens if possible.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Turnjoss?
Actually, it's a statement, so I'll wait till.
Thank you, Chair. Just to give a little bit of a backstory to that, Keep Whakatane District Beautiful Committee have, over the past 10 years, each year allocated fruit trees to various organisations, whether it be to schools, whether it be to marae, whether it be, initially it was a little bit of berm planting throughout the likes of Taniatua, also into community gardens, private individuals. We recognised one year residents of Edgecombe that have been impacted by floods, so we made fruit trees available to them there. So it has long been an initiative that has been operating within the Whakatane district through the ad hoc committee of Keep Whakatane District Beautiful.
No further points of clarification. Councillor Tanzos would like to make a statement.
I'll move the...
Move. Seconder, Deputy Mayor Umming. Any discussion?
Yes, I'll make a statement. Look, I just wanted to say thanks for bringing this forward. It's a really great strategy, I think. I know it's been in the making for quite a long time, and it's really great to see it in front of us. I think it's really speaks to our time and some of the kind of ecological issues that we face. It kind of speaks to those really, really well. I really like the goals that have been put in there, you know, from planting with forethought. One thing that's frustrated me for a long time is seeing trees around our CBD that just shouldn't have been planted there because, you know, they're going to have to be cut out before they reach maturity, and it's such a shame. And so, you know, seeing that these kinds of things are like really well articulated in the strategy, the stuff around food sovereignty and cultural plantings that Councillor Boynton referred to, really great to see that there and to see some clear avenues for people who want to pursue that. You know, monitoring and reducing safety hazards, all of those goals I think are really on point, and the series of actions are really good too. That, you know, I think if we see those things put into place, they'll have huge benefits for the ecology and for our communities. So I just think it's a great initiative.
That's right.
You have another statement?
No, I don't.
Sorry?
I don't have another one, but...
No. You have one from me?
Yes.
Thank you. Just to follow on from that, we have a reserve out in Taniatua known as the Amakura Reserve, which is hopefully going to become the Taniatua Community Orchard and Garden. Some 4 years ago, we planted in excess of 25 heritage apple trees. And the idea is to build on that reserve in the way of providing fruit trees for our community, but at the same time, as recently as last Saturday, we held a pruning demonstration by a local professional orchardist, the name of Greg Reed, and we had over 40 people come in attendance to get some indication or some learnings on how to maintain fruit trees at an acceptable height so that you can actually harvest the fruit that they produce. So it's an ongoing project with the support of the Keep Whakatane District Beautiful Committee and Taniatua Alliance, that we will promote that within the community, for the wider community.
Any further debate? Good. I'll put the motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Move on to 7.5 of the agenda, the Creative Hub Feasibility Investigation Report. Georgina and Tangi Mariana. And it's also, there's a presentation on Stella. For those that haven't seen it.
Thank you, and we also welcome to the table Leanne Jordan from Dauntless Advisory. Leanne has been the lead consultant on this piece of work. And we'd also like to acknowledge our manuhiri who have come to listen to the paper. A number of people in the room have helped contribute to both the development of our arts, culture and creativity strategy and the investigations into the Creative Hub, which you're about to hear more about.
This is on pages 203 to 246 of the agenda. Over to you, ladies.
Kia ora Living Together Committee and kia ora elected members. I tēnei te mihi kia koutou. Ko te mihi tuatahi ki ngā... sorry, you've already introduced who's at the table.
Speak up so that we can all hear, please.
He mihi tēnei ki ngā ringatoi, e tautoko ana tēnei kaupapa. I just want to acknowledge a mihi to all of the creatives who have actually engaged educated us as staff and councillors to actually first celebrate and develop our arts, culture and creativity strategy and our te reo version of that. So I just want to acknowledge you all for that investment, and also, of course, to our creatives that are here in the room to total for the kaupapa. We have, as the project team, we have done a lot of engagement with our creatives over these last 6 months, and also with our staff, taking everyone on a journey. And so the reason for this report is to provide the Living Together Committee with the findings and recommendations of this work that has been undertaken over this last 6 months, and of course led by Leanne Jordan of Dauntless Advisory alongside the staff, and to agree on the immediate next steps to take in response to the recommendations. And so if I could just take us back to our strategy and to celebrate that our vision for the arts, culture and creativity, te rautaki toi, ahurea me auahatanga, that e tui hononga ana te toi, te ahurea me te auahatanga ki ngā pito katoa o tō tātou rohe. So arts, culture and creativity, sparking connections in every corner of our district. And also just to remind us of our focus areas within that strategy, of improving well-being, connection through the arts, culture and creativity, oranga, to nurturing creativity, fostering collaboration and supporting the sector, ngā tangata, our people, and activating and enriching whakatane district's places and spaces, ngā wāhi. And so we come to this particular report, and I'd just like to also take this opportunity to acknowledge the funding for this body of work, of course, came from our tourism colleagues in sector and Steve and his team, so tēnei te mihi kia koutou mō tēnei mahi. Without that support, we actually wouldn't be here today. So a creative hub. A creative hub is a place or a space where creative mahi occurs, where it's shared, where it's learned, and where it's experienced. This creative work can include creating art of many forms. It can include a place for people to meet. It can include a place for collaboration, exhibitions and shows, a place for performances, and a place for learning. Things like workshops, seminars, tutorials and classes. And of course, there's an opportunity for art-based retail. Creative hubs should facilitate positive outcomes across multiple art forms and creative endeavours. They can also play transformative roles in our town and within our district, and regional identity, place making, driving tangible social, cultural and economic well-being outcomes that actually serve our communities well beyond the users of the Creative Hub itself. Creative hubs are direct and indirect contributors to local economies as providers and consumers of goods and services, and through tourism and foreign investment. Typically, creative hubs embrace user-pays commercial activity, like rentable spaces and venues for creative businesses, or public classes and retail, alongside free and subsidised community-focused activities for youth programs and for art therapy. So a creative hub is used or experienced by creatives of multiple forms and art forms, from students through to community groups, from audiences, and often the general public and visitors and tourists. Different models of creative hubs exist, and their forms and formats vary, as a creative hub should serve the aspirations and needs of the communities it supports and enables. it makes sense that each creative hub model should reflect the environment and context in which it is grounded. And so put simply, a creative hub is a place or spaces and spaces, where creative work occurs, it is shared, it is learnt, it is experienced. And so there's two principal conclusions that arise from the body of work that has been undertaken over these past 6 months for the Creative Hub Feasibility Project. And of course, the significant social, cultural and economic benefits for our communities in the creative sector can be realised through the establishment of a constellation creative hub model for the Whakatane district. And secondly, there is considerable potential to develop a compelling arts, culture, tourism profile and product offering for the Whakatane district linked to this constellation creative hub model. I'd actually like to now invite Leanne to actually contribute.
Kia ora tautau. It's wonderful to be here with you again. I've been looking forward to this day, and I've also slightly dreading it because this is the point where, you know, all that work comes together, and I feel a considerable, I guess, responsibility to share what we've learned and to advocate for a way forward which I firmly believe is the right thing for Whakatane District Council. So, adding to Tangimediana's story in terms of context, this project's been very cognizant the whole way through of the backstory, the expectations of our creative community, your desire to support the creative communities, but also the kind of quite significant financial pressures and challenges that we're all really aware of, not just in local government, but nationally and internationally at the moment. Also conscious of trying to balance the needs of the district. You've got a widely dispersed group of creatives. So there have been multiple factors that we've kind of interrogated, chewed over, discussed with people in terms of formulating the conclusions that I bring to you today. I think the keywords, there's some keywords I'd want to emphasise here. One is transformative. Arts and culture and creativity is often viewed as something that kind of happens to the side, but it's woven through everything we do. It is business, it is education, it is having a good time, it is finding a way to express yourself. All those things are happening already in your communities, and partly the constellation model is about bringing those things together in a more coordinated, applying a bit more structure to it. And at the same time looking around in a kind of a 360-degree way and saying, well, what other opportunities present? Because I'm a strong believer if you can feed multiple tui from one pot of nectar, you should absolutely try and do that. So without in any way compromising or undermining the intent of this mahi, which was to investigate the feasibility for a creative hub, we can at the same time do some things that have very real benefits in other domains for Whakatane District Council, most specifically tourism. And Nicola, as the tourism manager, is here today to kind of speak to that as well. But also, I think in terms of vibrancy of the town centre, the opportunity to leverage Hono Hapori, which I heard you talking about earlier this morning, to actually make sure that we are talking about stuff sparking in every corner of the district. Another key word for me at the moment has been consequently pragmatism, without sacrificing the ideal. So you hold the big picture, and at the same time we need to make a start, and I firmly believe that a constellation model is the way to get started, to use the momentum. There's considerable momentum behind this now, to take that next step, and then that next step, and then that next step. So just to talk briefly to the slide up there, what a constellation model essentially does is recognise and I guess give a name and an identity to the pattern that already exists. And it also fills in the gaps between what you have in terms of existing infrastructure to make sure that there is a cohesive whole. The model's creative sector led with evidence of council commitment. It balances collective and individual brands and autonomy, so it doesn't subordinate all the various groups and identities that they've already established into this kind of homogenous whole. What it says is, guys, if you want to go to a place that really knows what it's doing with arts, culture and creativity and lives it, go to Whakatane District. So it does provide flexibility and structure. I think importantly it provides spaces or places in both the virtual and the physical sense for everyone to contribute in the way that they can. Importantly, it's scalable and stageable. And in terms of the models that are available to you, it is a modest investment, and it also an investment over time rather than a big bang up front. So one initiative, multiple benefits. It does take an ecosystem approach because there are a lot of really important interdependencies here. And I've stressed in the report, as you probably noticed, that while the recommendations can be staged progressively, they all connect in a way to make a whole. And success is dependent on all those interdependent parts working together. I see Council's role very specifically as facilitator and enabler. We've got a community, creative communities that are ready to go and they're happy to take responsibility for their livelihoods and to contribute, I think, overall to the identity and the profile for arts, culture and creativity for the district. And they are looking for the right signal, I think, from Council to move forward. I've stressed working with the willing a lot in the report because you have, the momentum is there, and people ready to go. I've been super impressed by the respectful relationships that exist and between what are quite diverse creative communities in many ways. There is a common goal there though, and that is that focus on shared spaces and opportunities to collaborate and to put arts, culture and creativity on the map for the district. There is no substitute for doing basics really, really well. And a lot of the component parts are here. I think last time we met, there were some questions. One might have been from Mayor Luca around, is tourism, arts, culture and cultural tourism really viable? And the answer is absolutely yes. It is about owning your story, which is here. And again, doing it well. So, I guess in terms of, what do I really want to say to you before I open the floor for questions about this opportunity is, and they are, it's real, it's significant, it's completely doable, it's bold, but at the same time it presents relatively low risk, and it's a really positive thing to do in a number of ways. So I guess that's what I'd like to share at the moment, and we're all here happy to take any questions that you might have.
Okay. Is there more, Georgie?
No, I think maybe just flick to the slide that has the recommendations.
And so the resolutions that we're seeking today is to receive the Creative Hub Feasibility report, to support a Constellation Creative Hub model and bring back an implementation plan. And to request that staff further explore proposals from high profile, local, financially sustainable creative enterprises to lease the property known as the Wally Sutherland Building at 266 The Strand, Whakatane, establishing in arts, culture, and creativity-based activities.
Thank you for that. So we'll open up for clarification. Victor?
Yeah, thank you very much, ladies. I've got a question. I mean, the arts, all fields, including cinema, theatre, visual, can have an important role in shaping community opinions, like political views and not least views on in the environmental space. Given that climate change is one of the main existential threats that our current and future generations are going to face, arts can probably have a major role in that sphere. I can cite, paintings by Pablo Picasso and the film The Day After. So, could this initiative represent an opportunity for activating, enriching, and supporting our climate change education initiatives by, say, encouraging climate and environmentally oriented themes? And is there something that we can specifically do within the strategy to help that along a bit? And how you answer help?
The short answer, I think, is yes, Luca. The thing I think that's particularly important about Ngātoi Māori in terms of this, the point you make, is the connection to whenua and place. So the things that a lot of our creative communities hold dear are the things that they are expressing through their art, and the opportunities for education around that abound. In fact, I could have written, you probably thought 37 pages was too many pages anyway, but I could have written another whole appendix on the educational opportunities connected to this. So yes, and also I think a number of, a good proportion of the creative communities share your commitment to preservation and protection of the environment.
Yeah, I just wonder if there's anything that more, more explicit that we can do in the area by, by guiding it more in that direction. But it sounds like the answer is potentially yes.
So I think this is an evolutionary model, so I think it's important to kind of get started and find our way through. But you'll notice that some of the recommendations also relate to taki and tōpūtu. So there is within councils plan staff and portfolio the opportunity to also send out any key messages and use educational opportunities through those fora as well as the wider hub, if that helps.
Thank you for that, and I look forward to seeing it.
Councillor Boynton.
Tēnei te mihi ni kia korua kia koutou, tēnei te mihi atu ki te whānau iti, I roto i te whare e tēnei, mihi atu ki ngā kaimahi moa tātou kaumihira ki te tautoko i ngā mahi toi. Just to acknowledge those who are here also in our room as part of the public gallery, Kame and his whānau, and our other whānau who are part of the community in arts, and also for the report itself. Very thorough, very wide-reaching. It's like all the thoughts that had to be had have been had and needed to be included somewhere along the lines. I thought it was quite a massive piece of work, particularly in that it's turning into a comment, but there is a question, that it has incorporated the whakaaro of ensuring that everyone is part of the constellation and that everybody is included at an equal level of contribution, thought and input and benefit. So I liked seeing the ability to use the different places and the different organisations that are involved in that, including council and private organisations who have been involved in the arts in our community for quite some time. So I just wanted to acknowledge that huge piece of mahi. My question was, with looking at the short term and in some of the recommendations there, was around cost, because inevitably we need to know that the project itself, or the overall project, is going to not only wash its face but also have the potential to have a return on investment for the council, but also for our rohe. Do you see that?
Absolutely, and I think the point you made, Councillor Boynton, around that partnership of council, creative sector business, as well as the volunteer organisations, ensure that the cost and the responsibilities of leadership don't fall solely on council. In fact, council has that enabling role. But there are very real revenue generating opportunities, and perhaps actually if I just hand over to my colleague Nicola for a moment to talk a little bit about tourism, but importantly the small conference venue market, which is a huge unmet demand nationally, and which I think, again, in terms of looking around and seeing all the levers we can pull through a creative hub, that presents a great opportunity as well.
Kia ora. Yes, the meetings and small business events market is something that we haven't, tapped into yet, just because we don't have the facilities and we do not have a hotel complex. But I was recently over at the National Meetings and Venues Expo in Rotorua, and it became really apparent there's emerging demand for smaller, more boutique spaces, which could be an art gallery, for instance, places like Wharfside, that kind of suit that 100 to 150 people market. So, some of our existing spaces could be adapted through that kind of midweek, quieter times of the year, the off-season, to actually, become part of a really boutique market. And a lot of our motels are of high calibre, so they can accommodate that. We don't need to wait for a hotel or indeed the, complex to start putting together a product which suits that. And then, the flow-on effects to the wider visitor economy by having an off-season offer, from the creative sector, are immense at the moment. You'll notice through the report about the impacts of tourism, but we are very much a seasonal beachside offer at the moment. So having various other activities that can be programmed through school holidays, or some of our weekends that all connect through the constellation. I think the flow into the wider visitor economy can be really quite significant. So that's that kind of indirect return on investment.
Thank you. I just supplementary. So in terms of the current budget in our RTP and what's been made available to be able to pursue this objective, we have an opportunity within the recommendation regarding a lease on a current property that the council has that isn't currently leased, to my knowledge. So that in a sense is providing increased revenue for us. Can I just clarify that?
I might hand over to Georgina at this point.
Yes, and the purpose of today is to seek your approval for us to bring back a proposal which will contain a lot more of the detail around the opportunity for what's known as the Wally Sutherland building. So you'll get if you agree to the recommendations today, you'll get further analysis on the financial implications of a proposal.
So you just wanted to, just one more Just wanting to be able to get some points clarified around our support of this and what the returns were. Is it also fair to say that given recently we've had large events that have come to our area that have had huge economic benefits from just one art show, is it fair to say that if we have a space for creatives like that we would see more of that happen?
Absolutely. Spaces like that, I don't know if you noticed in the report, but I think a very telling statistic is that 14% of the people that go through the doors into corporate turn left to the gallery. So if you just think about the people that you are not converting into people appreciating the art and culture on display there, it's quite a telling statistic. And I think the advantage of the constellation model is that you're attracting people to multiple spaces. There'll be potentially something for everyone. But also when the spaces work to a certain extent in a coordinated way, you create boutique weekend or long weekend or festival type offerings in a vibe. The report talks a lot about the opportunity to activate certain geographical areas with clusters. It creates that vibrancy that's really attractive, both to a summer beach audience that might already be here, but particularly to attract into the area the arts and culture tourism market, which is a high value market. They are tourists who seek out the opportunities to go and explore the kind of thing that we're talking about.
Thank you for that. I just also wanted to reference in terms of the national significance of the event that we had not too long ago with the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra, and just the ability to also have that international reach, and that is a real possibility with something like this.
And I mean, Nicola will be able to provide the stat, but regardless of why people go to a place, we know that a very high percentage of visitors to any place, it's more than 40%, might be closer to 60, want while they're there to visit an art gallery and or a museum and or a creative space. So you've got people that opt to go and do that, but you've got also people that always look to do that when they're somewhere anyway.
You don't know, I'm carrying on. But it also too provides an opportunity that if you do have high profile events like that you are drawing whānau in who won't necessarily be the usual gallery art goers. I'm also referencing to those who connect in different ways to mahi toi, are not necessarily in those formal spaces. So, thank you.
Well, Councillor Jukes, Mayor Victor and Deputy Mayor, waiting
patiently.
Councillor Jukes.
Well, the good news is that Councillor Boyden has actually asked most of the financial type questions that I was actually going to, but thank you very much for your mahi. Very supportive of this. I think it's a great opportunity for us. And just if this does go through, the next report, just around the lease and that, if you hadn't already thought to, but potentially maybe include options where funding may be sought to cover part of that lease cost as well, because something for this may be able to get funding. So look at options that around that as well. But yeah, thank you, fabulous.
Victor.
Yeah, no, I might be barking up the same tree. I had to duck out and I missed a large part of what Councillor Boynton was talking about. But I'm wondering if, as part of the more expanded proposal, you intend to come back with a full-blown business case or business plan. Because you've dangled the carrot, but I guess I'm looking for something a bit more solid. So will it contain a business case?
Can I just make one comment and then perhaps Georgina is best placed to respond. There's 266 The Strand, Wally Sutherland, and the the numbers around that. And then separately, there are the returns from having a coordinated offering across a constellation. And so I think it's important that those two things are borne in mind when you're thinking about the economics of it.
The very direct answer to your question, Mayor Victor, is no, we do not plan to bring back a full business case on the next steps that we are proposing. Leanne's report is the investigation that we've carried out, but we will provide you with analysis in our report that comes back to you in relation to each of the recommendations.
And some, there will be obviously, if there are these returns that you've already foreshadowed, some of them will come back to council coffers, will they? Or
come back to council coffers.
Will there be? Sorry, Mayor Victor, we're having trouble hearing you clearly. Is your question, will there be a cost to council as a result of the recommendation?
No. Will there be returns to council, apart from just returns to the general community that are unquantified, but do you anticipate returns to council?
Yes, we do, which is why the key word in that recommendation is commercial.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and kia ora Tangawhiti-ana and Leanne, thank you. There's a few things going on here. I wanted to start with congratulations, and we feel like we've progressed quite a long way, even though sometimes it feels a long time to get to this point. So I'm in support of the recommendations. One of the things I'm not sure about with the recommendation is, are we accepting all the recommendations within Leanne's report? Yeah, we're not.
No, we're in relation to all of that. We're asking you to agree to the Constellation Hub model, but then we are recommending that we bring you back an implementation plan. And so when we bring you back a report, it will have an implementation that links back to the recommendations. The truth of the matter is we worked really hard to get the report finished, Leanne's report, and so we simply haven't had time to develop the implementation plan. So no, which is why we're not seeking.
Supplementary? So if I go to page 207, 231, I'm not sure what page number it is of your, 2 of your report, I think, Leanne. When we're talking about the Heritage Gallery and Takitaki being merged back over to this site here, I was just thinking, wouldn't it be easier to move Takitaki to the Heritage Gallery and move the library back here? Because one minute we're talking about well-being of the community, and now we're talking about tourism. And I was just thinking in terms of, if the Wally Sutherland Hub goes ahead, wouldn't it be easier to have them connected there? So when there is weekend and after hours things and all that's happening, that they're all together and all help give some stimulus into the local community. And then the library is an independent one here. So I can see there could be quite a few additional costs with the separation of them being in the 2 spaces. So did you consider that?
Did I consider moving the library? No, to be honest, I didn't. But I understand your point and I take them in terms. So there will be a number of things for everyone involved to work through in terms of coordination. The idea of having 3 anchor sites is partly about just making sure you've got 3 sufficiently facilities of scale that there's always something on offer. It doesn't necessarily mean that 3 always need to be open at the same time. That creates cost and pressure, to your point. So I think there's ways that can be leveraged where at times, especially for festival type, everything's kind of up and running, and the other times when certain things are on and are being promoted. There are, I wouldn't presume to a comment for Georgina in terms of the role of libraries. I think it's important to acknowledge that tourism and wellbeing can actually coexist quite happily in different ways. Your visitor audience is sometimes international tourists, sometimes domestic tourists, sometimes visiting whānau, sometimes residents if you're thinking about school holiday programs and those kinds of things. And I know from, because Joe Hunt, who's the acting libraries managers with us here at the moment, there are real opportunities to use the whole of Te Kōpiti building, not just the left-hand side that is currently the galleries, for events, for performances. And there have been some examples recently that people have shared with me that have been really successful in terms of using that building. So I think there are some advantages in giving the museum a clear mandate, giving Te Kōpiti a clear mandate, perhaps more about the contemporary, museum more about the history and the storytelling of the toonga. But the Creative Hub creates the opportunity for those things to be fused a bit. So greater collaboration between Takitaki and Te Kōpiti to make sure that if there's some contemporary exhibition of something, there's consideration to given to what from the collection at Takitaki might have deep meaning and connection for that, and the opportunity to leverage both for visitation and as well as combined exhibitions. So that's getting into the programming element that we talked about, that we haven't really explored what it looks like in practice, but certainly within the creative communities and with the staff there's been a number of conversations about how that could work to enliven both those places in a cohesive way.
Thank you for that. I just sort of thought next to a park would have been better for the library, and keeping all of the Creative Hub centres over there along by the riverfront and where all the amenities are would have been a more logical sort of thing. I did also want to ask a question about Arts Whakatane. You've just recommended a shed, additional shed be put on there. Do you not relocate them to 266 the Strand? Because that piece of land that the Arts Whakatane are in at the moment, perhaps has got other utilisation purposes, and they are looking at expansion as well, and there are the regularity of them and that cohort of people would actually be primary for down at 266 the Strand.
So Rex Morpeth Park and its considerations was outside of scope for me, so I haven't made any, just so I understand what you're saying. The Arts Society, and I'm not recommending an additional shed for them. I did want to give visibility to their requirement, because part of this process has been listening to the communities and what they feel they need in order to be successful. But there is, whether the Arts House remains where it is at the moment, or whether you make some decision to reutilise that space, there is still the opportunity presented with the Wally Sutherland building for additional capacity for all those groups through conversation. And I'd suggest that the creative communities are already alert to that opportunity, Deputy Mayor, so conversations, yeah.
Thank you, Mr Chair.
Councillor Tanzos.
Thank you, tēnei te mihi kia koutou. Ngā mihi kua mihia e tautoko ana, e te whānau iti. James McCarthy, Sue Wah in the back there. Leanne, to you and to all the staff who have done so much work to bring this forward. This is a really great piece of work. It's fantastic, and yeah, I really like it. I really like the idea of a constellation creative hub. I like the way that invokes the feeling of some of the stars in our community gathered together in a way that creates meaning and it reflects the culture that we're all part of. So I really like that idea. And the importance of an ecosystem approach. I have a couple of questions. So one of them, but I think it's answered in the paper, is about the, an ecosystem relies on linkages that that communicate and kind of, I suppose, coordinate in a way. So I see you've talked about regular hui among the arts community I think there's some proposals for some capacity in council. Is there? So I just want to explore that a bit further. How does that coordination and linkage?
So I think, sorry to make everything a little bit more complicated perhaps than it needs to be, but like a number of things that we're talking about here, there's levels. So there are informal networks existing, and if you find if you try to get a group of people together, they talk to each other and they come together. The Creative Hub creates spaces to make that easier. The recommendation about the biennial HOE is to make sure that there's kind of a bit more a structured approach to make sure everyone has that equal opportunity to be heard and to be part of problem solving. Recommendation 6, is it? Regarding effectively a tourism and business hub, I think is a key piece in terms of bringing it all together. So alongside the informal networks, we really want to make sure that there is some structural mechanism for putting the right people together in the right places at the right time. And the idea that, as we all know through co-location, a lot is learned and understood through osmosis as much as conscious communication. But it also creates a bit of a focal point, if you will, for those things. As the model matures, there is the opportunity to get more structured around shared systems for bookings. For example, you've got a range of grade spaces going this way and this way to book at the moment, but also a virtual space for virtual community and promotion. And I think I mentioned in the report that the Creative Bay Plenty website is a good example of how some of the stories and opportunities can be shared. So the Tourism and Business Hub, again, is utilising existing organisations, existing council staff or vacancies, and existing mahi, but the idea of co-locating for that critical mass and the synergies that come from putting the right people together. Yeah.
Thank you. In the slide, it talks about doing the basics really, really well, and as I think last time we spoke, one of my concerns is that council have a tendency to complicate things and bureaucratise things. How do we do the basics really, really well?
I think the Constellation Hub model helps in this regard because it allows each part to be really clear about its identity, its mandate and its contribution. And part of the recommendations around Takataki and Te Kokotu is to help those key facilities get really clear about their mandate and their contribution. There's also a recommendation in here about an advisory committee to the General Manager, which is another opportunity to check in on each other, and I think ultimately perhaps a mechanism to hold the hub in a sense a bit accountable to each other. But basics done well is most simply be clear what you're trying to do and then make sure you do it. Have processes to check in. The visitor lens is vital because typically what's good for a visitor is good for everybody else as well. So it's not necessarily about how we do things, it's about how we're perceived and who are we when we do this thing. And does that generate that vibe, that impression that we want people to have of the district? So the thing I like about our constellation is you're placed to shine, you belong to something bigger than you are, but all those stars play a part, and it's important that people get clear and get serious about it. But that's what I'm hearing from the community.
I had one more, but I don't want to hog the thing if someone else has got questions.
Last one, I've got Councillor Ringo.
Thank you. You talk about the right umbrella being important. Could you talk about that?
Perhaps I'll give you an example from somewhere else because it's always a bit hard to talk about it for a different place. But an umbrella brand or story or identity is one that sits across the top and allows the individual entities to have their. So from my last role at council, I was responsible for the visitor destinations, one of which, or two of which, were the Waiwhakariki National Heritage Park and the Hamilton Zoo. They were co-located, they were on opposite sides of a road. Ironically, one was in Hamilton City Council, one was in Waiwhakariki District Council, but anyhow, they were co-located, and that's all they were. But in actual fact, when we sat down and looked into it, both their mahi and their purpose was around kaitiaki tanga, looking after the story. They were both heavily, they were places of significance to Māori. There were some very wonderful stories that spoke to conservation, preservation, and all that goes along with that, a sense of belonging, recreation, well-being. So we created an umbrella brand, which was Te Kararoa Nature Precinct. So you still went to Hamilton Zoo at Te Kararoa Nature Precinct, or you went to Waiwhakariki at Te Kararoa. And additionally, the Astronomy Astrological Society was there, and there was a cafe. So they also came under that umbrella brand. It gave us the advantage to market each and leverage the whole. But it also, and I think this is the important thing with an umbrella brand, if you think Sylvia Park in Auckland, you've still got glaçons, you've still got hennas, but people know they can go to Sylvia Park and have a shopping experience. People knew they could go to Te Kararoa Nature Park and know that they would have an experience of some sort. They didn't have to map it out and work out an itinerary and think too hard about it. I go there, there's going to be something for me and my whānau to see and do that speaks to what's important to us. So an umbrella brand around an identity around arts, culture and creativity for the Whakatane district, I think, is the key.
Those examples rely on location though, don't they?
They are about location, but location works for Sylvia Park, for example, but with the Te Kararoa, the key thing was unity of mission. So the tagline for that was encountering wild, or encounters with nature. So, the whole brand and marketing thing's a whole other thing again. But what I guess I'm trying to say is that there is an opportunity without putting the burden of a particular brand on the creative hub to create an identity or a persona that is attractive to visitors, that residents can feel pride and connection to, that will serve your purposes very, very well.
Thank you.
Loranga.
Thank you. I get that one, but then I think we have to get out with that. Nami ia te kia koe e pa. Ka mai ki te tai tūri nei ka nai tamiki te rana tiru pēnā o mana. Right away, we've just been and we've had a meeting around what does this place look like, and we weren't happy with commercial services or residential being named as such. But bringing something to the tourist industry now, love everything about the kaupapa, but there was something when we went into the LTP and consultation, and there was a lot of different feedbacks. So this question may not necessarily be for you, but I suppose in order for the council to give more support, there may be some more information that we may need. So Georgina, I'm not too sure where I'm going to direct this, because inside of the reports over here, and I know you're going to do further analysis, which what you fellows have proposed, but inside of this is about the rating impact. So far there's no rating impact. So in the further analysis report you're going to do, are you going to bring something around that? Because it also speaks about it will lead to future decisions that are likely to have a rating impact. I'm just trying to get an understanding of that, whether that's going to come out in that. We haven't done our LTP on the rates yet, it may come down further down the track, but just for us to get a lens on that, and then maybe be able to support, because there was quite a bit of a feedback around our arts culture and the LTP. So I just want to give probably something to support.
So yes, Councillor Rangiaho, we will, in the next paper, we will detail any rating impacts associated with future decisions. And today's paper has no rating impact.
Yes, that's right.
This extensive piece of work has been funded out of tourism recovery funding, which is externally funded.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all, and Councillor O'Brien, sorry.
Te kanohi o te nema, kanohi o nāri ngātai. E hanga mihinui ki a koe, tai mai koe, rau koe hoki toi, koutou hoki, o tai mai, te whakatinana mai. A tēnei kaupapa I tēnei rā. Waimari hoki mātou, te ki te a koe, te a koutou, a koe tai tinana mai wangiri a tatou tēnei hōti rā, tēnā koutou. Tai menena, he ara tēnei, mohe ona koe, he ara tēnei a paupau hare. Ia kōrua, mahi anga mai, ane tonu. Rua no atu tēnei kaupapa I au nena, nena tūpaka I riola, nena ki a ko, ki o koro, ki o koto hoki, aere tonu.
Ka pai.
Thank you for that, and I see this as a great initiative and will become a great asset for our whole district. So looking forward to seeing it move forward. But I've got Councillor Fuller's indicated that he was happy to move the recommendations on page 202. Do I have a second? Councillor Dennis, sorry.
Oh, sorry, I was just signaling
Oh.
a second.
Okay, Councillor Dennis is second. Any debate?
Can I just make a statement? I know the last bit was a question time. I haven't got an art bone in my body, and it kind of grieves me. If I try and draw a circle, it ends up being a square. I was very privileged to grow up with a father who was extremely good, and I've seen books of his drawings, and he used to do it with pen and the old-fashioned ink nib, he had a number of them of different sizes. They're in a cupboard. When I grew up, he never ever did it again. But from history and his drawings, I know that when he drew a horse, he would start off drawing the bones, and then he would draw the tendons on it, and then he'd draw the muscles, and he'd stage the photo so you could see the different things, and the last he would do would be the skin, and then he'd add the expressions and the shadings and things like that. And I think what you're doing is very similar. What you're doing is you're now creating the bones, you're getting your pens ready, your ink, and you're starting to do that, and I just really admire what you do, and I admire the artists. Being on the community funding committee dealing with creative arts fund, I realise that it's not all about drawing pretty pictures. The variety of art is huge, and then you add in the Māori art world too, and that expands it even further. So my father eventually turned into a cartoonist, and when we were growing up for extra money, like when I was born, he used to submit cartoons to the Sydney Herald. Him and a bloke called Mahinik, who was the Herald cartoonist.
Wow.
So Mahinik was always rejected, and we have receipts where my father was paid for his cartoons. And so he got in a lot of trouble afterwards too. He used to draw pictures after the war. There was an American destroyer came up the Whangarei Harbour, and he drew this cartoon he was a cartoonist for the Northern Advocate, and the mayor eventually wanted him fired because he drew this lovely cartoon of the mayor bowing down to the American warboat coming up with all the expressions. But you know, when he retired, he took it up again, and what he used to do is go and buy the Herald. And Mahinik would have done his cartoons in the Herald, and they're a bit like stick figures. So my father would spend the whole morning adding in shading and adding in the colours, and then he'd add in the expressions, and he'd add in the background, and like there might be a fence in the back, so he'd draw in the palings and all the shading and all that. And so I grew up with a person who was really interested in using his art to promote ideas, to provoke, like someone sitting out there whose display I've seen to, and I really admire you, Tamaiti, for the way you use your art to promote and provoke history and shove it in front of our faces, so we have to acknowledge it. And so
Should have stopped at the sentence before.
I can see that this is a really amazing thing where we can use this to get artists of different disciplines together that may be able to influence each other, so that that person might get used to maybe introducing some of that person's art. And I just think it's a great idea, so congratulations.
Councillor Puller.
How do you follow that?
Quickly, I hope.
Very quickly. So we can look forward to when Councillor Dennis retires and we can do some art. But firstly, I'd like to just say a big congratulations for the arts team for the Light Up Whakatane. What a great show that's been. And finishes this week. And to Mayor Victor, he's asking for a business case, but Mayor Victor, these are artists. And they create. And they create a vibrant community, so that's great. And I'm glad to see that under 3, when we had the LTP submissions, we had people breaking their necks to start in the Sutherland site, and you're taking that up, so that's great. In terms of Taki Deputy Mayor, that building's designed to look after the stuff that's in there, and it's quite extensive, so it wouldn't be just a matter of shifting things away. Lastly, Tingi Mariama, in the last slide you said good to go. For me, go for it. Thank you.
Any other debate? Motion's been put and been seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you for the presentation. Well done. Right. This shouldn't take too long. Just one standing between you guys and lunch. So,
It'll be that quick.
7.6 amendments to the parking restriction register report. Abner and Bevan.
Page, sir. Page.
Pages 247 to 262 of the agenda.
Thank you. Abner's sick at the moment, so I've invited Joe and Chris to come and speak to the report.
Welcome. Chris.
Thank you. Look, the report in front of you today is basically just a very basic update to our parking schedule with some minor modifications around where our no parking lines are in relation to...
Speak up, sorry please.
Sorry, no microphone in front of me. That's right.
It's up there, Joe.
Yeah, look, I was just saying, it's really just an update to our parking schedule where we've just included some additional line marking and corrected some minor errors where our line markers may have adjusted the line marking slightly when they've gone remarked. There's some changes around the Tuio Oyster Farm just to improve visibility of the entranceways and the no parking zones there as well. But other than that, it's relatively minor changes.
Any questions? Councillor Boynton.
Make it short, and I probably missed it because I wasn't. I just wanted to just ask around the Wainui Road and the Oyster Ohira, and just what their feedback has been on that. Will it hinder their business or support?
So we've been in conversations with the Oyster Farm for a number of months now, just around their licence to occupy. They're really happy so far, as I can tell, with the changes, and yeah, we haven't had any comment otherwise.
Thank you.
Merriman?
Yeah, it's on the same topic, but I've also got another couple of questions. So they know there'll be no parking, so their staff can't park either, because I don't know if.
Victor, can you mute, please? Thank you.
So the roadside parking, there is parking available. It's just on the other side of the yellow lines in front of the business. The intent there is to keep as many vehicles off the roadside, just to make sure that there's visibility in and out the parking area. There's a bit of a crash history with the site. There's been a couple of minor accidents with right-turning vehicles. So that changes there address those particular safety issues. The last thing we want is to have a more serious accident happening there. And certainly they're aware of those risks and also want to work towards having a safer environment for their customers as well.
I do agree about the safety aspect. So they've seen this image where there's double yellow lines on both sides of the road. Is he happy with it?
Yes.
Okay. That leads, I've got a couple more, if that's all right. So everyone who's now got a yellow line being proposed to go in front of them has been advised there's a yellow line going in front of them, like College Road and Whitehorse Drive and...
So the College Road markings have been put in place about a year ago, so they're actually already in place.
Okay.
We had consultation with the schools around that, which is
And my last one was about the fishing club. So you were recommending moving a couple of disabled parks from the east side over to the west side, southwest side. Why are we doing anything there until we know what's happening with the fishing club? Because, you know, one of the proposals going forward is perhaps the removal of the fishing club, and it's going to not be where the disabled parks are.
So those changes were actually made a long time ago, but the parking settings are updated to reflect that. So it's just a correction of what's
I think that, to add to that, the intention is to have a reasonably regular update on any changes to come through to council for approval. And I guess the other part of that is the fishing club conversation's quite disconnected from the parking bylaw kind of and road lining marking conversation.
Okay.
So whenever a decision is made on that, everything will potentially change in that area.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Isles?
Let the Mayor go next, and then I'll...
Mayor Victor?
Yeah, thank you. I have had fielded some recent inquiries or expressions of frustration by members of the community that are trying to get out of their driveways or out of narrow lanes where there's sort of built up residential areas, about cars that are parking very close to the exit road or driveway. At the moment, the rules are, 2 metres away from the edge of the curb, is that not right? And is there the potential to extend that 2 metres to make it easier for some of these, especially more senior folk, to be able to get out of their driveways?
Yeah, I'll answer that. The restrictions on how close you can park to an entranceway are through, I believe, different legislations, and I understand it's 3 metres. And the parking team enforces those requirements if residents complain about people parking too close to their entranceways. They will go out and measure, ensure they're not too close.
Right, but can we extend that 3 metres, or are we stuck with 3 metres?
I don't believe that's a council rule. I think that's a government rule.
Could you confirm that, please?
Through your chair, we can extend yellow no marking lines through our bylaw, and we can put those in place obviously wherever they see as fit. So we could, in theory, extend that 3 metre limit, but in doing so we would need to go out and actually line mark that, whereas the current legislation means that 3 3 metres applies regardless of line marking. So yeah, it is a possibility if there were areas where we had ongoing concerns around vehicles parked too close to entrances.
Right, thank you. That's Ross.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I was just going to say that I think this is a common sense amendment to the parking restrictions register, and a lot of these amendments have been in place for some time. So happy to move recommendations 1, 2 and 3.
Before we come to that, Councillor Boynton.
I just had a question around the sort of, they've already been implemented, some of them have been put in place. I did want to ask how many of these that have been put forward have already been done. And just a question around legality, is there anything regarding citizens and that who might have got fines or things like that, parking things on those that have already been amended but have yet to be approved by council?
Yeah, so our parking team is really good at actually checking which areas are legally enforceable and which ones aren't, and they quite often they're the ones who identify where, say, a line marking's gotten a couple of metres longer than it might previously been, and so we can make that correction. So they're very good at making sure that everything they issue is legally enforceable. Of course, sometimes we will go and line mark, we will detect a safety issue. We'll do that ahead of the bylaw change to address the safety issue and also to deter people. So whilst it's not legally enforceable, it still acts as a deterrent.
I just wanted to make sure that there's no sort of legal liability on us as council.
Shouldn't be, no.
Councillor Dennis.
I just got 3 queries on this. On the White Horse Drive, I don't understand why you're putting yellow lines in there. I mean, you're saying it's to improve site visibility, but site visibility of what?
Can I answer that, Mr. Chair?
Yes, General.
So it's a rise there, Councillor Dennis, and I fully support what they've done there, because before people would park, you couldn't see, nor could you pass. So it's been really important to have those lines exactly where they are. And unfortunately, there's 1 or 2 people that must be colourblind or something, because they tend to park there at odd days. But generally, since it's been remarked, people have observed those parking. So it's been really crucial from where I
Safety.
Does that satisfy your queries?
Are the house owners happy that they can't park outside their own property?
There's usually two. I mean, I'll take because I'm not particularly au fait with that particular one, but I'll take Baby Street as an example. And usually there's 2 sides to it. Some people will be unhappy, lots of people will be happy with it, and it becomes a bit of a balancing act where we put yellow lines. But a lot of the time, for instance, with these ones, you shouldn't be parking in ways that obstruct. So in some ways, legislatively, people probably shouldn't be parking there to start with. So the yellow lines really just provide a reminder in those sort of instances. So there are always going to be residents who will be unhappy with things, but at the end of the day, we're looking after the safety of the majority.
So part of the problem there, the road's too narrow. If Councillor Puller's saying that people can't overtake, I mean, you should be overtaking that area anyway, but...
Well,
it's the rise.
Coming out of the driveways as well.
Yeah, it's like that.
Yeah, it goes up there.
And people don't park close to the curb either, so...
Can't see the contour.
My second one, the oyster farm. If you could park on the inside of the yellow line, is that legal? Or is what the yellow line's saying you aren't allowed to park on it?
Yeah, you're actually quite right. If you're parking on the other side of the yellow line, there needs to be, in some of those areas, some additional signage to prevent that from happening, which we will be enforcing as well.
So you don't want them to do that?
So if you're travelling towards Whakatane on Wainui Road, there's a particular area on the left which is often used for parking. The intent of that extra sealed area is to actually allow people to go around right turning vehicles. So when people park there, they don't have that ability. Okay. So we do need to address that. Yeah, so legally people could.
Legally you can, but we don't want them to. Okay, College Road. When you've got that yellow line all the way up there, I'm a bit confused with that because people park all the way along there, plus there's a cycle lane. So are you saying that no one can park anywhere along that road from Lata Ave right through to past the college?
So again, the yellow line there, is on the road edge, and inside of that we have added parallel parking. So angle parking, sorry. So you're legally allowed to park within that.
So in that case, we're happy for them to park on the inside of the yellow line. Okay, all good. Thank you.
Councillor Puller?
Oh, I've said what I was going to say. Thank you.
Okay. No further questions then. Councillor Isles is happy to move the recommendations on page 202. Do we have a seconder? Councillor O'Brien. Any discussion, debate? All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you all for your attendance. And hi. Sorry.
Just one thing I'd like to add in, and it's related to the topic. That's the conversation that's been going around on social media in relation to the Uhupi food trucks. So, you know, there's a misconception that council's trying to shut them down. It's not the case. The real intention is to have a conversation around safety and support and allow growth, but in a way that makes sense so that it keeps people in the community safe, people on the road safe, and also we're sort of adhering to our bylaws and rules. So we're supportive of the businesses. We had a conversation and met with them yesterday, and we've developed some solutions together that we're looking to implement. In the future though, I think there needs to be a wider conversation around mobile trading and where there are some spaces that we would look to allow that and ensure that there is infrastructure, bylaws, arrangements that allow that to be undertaken in a safe and effective way. We also acknowledge that, you know, some of the bylaws there's quite a bit of overlap, and so we talked a bit earlier about the public places bylaw and fires and barbecues. A number of these food trucks have fires and barbecues to cook their food, so I think, you know, whatever we do, we make sure that we're adjusting our bylaws to address the challenges. Another bit of context, we used to have a mobile trading bylaw, which was removed in 2017, I think, and it didn't have anything to replace it, so or address the risks and the issues. So I think we're seeing a bit of this starting to bubble up in the vacuum of some clear guidance and rules. So we have a plan in place and we're working on a number of solutions. Hope to have some more discussions in the near future.
Thanks for that, Bevan. Thanks, Ross.
Can we just add to that, Bevan, because there's also issues over the traders that have been setting themselves up at the entrance into Rugby Park. I've had a couple of phone calls from people there saying why all of a sudden have we been moved on. So I know it's a slightly different consideration there with the neighbouring properties have access through that into their properties, but can that be included?
It's definitely one for consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, and I just remind all members that David and Laney want to catch up with us out in the lounge over lunch. Just ask Councillor O'Brien if you can close the meeting with the karakia, please.
Nui tata, te tau no mana, te tanga te mea ngā nā i tēnō mata. Ko mahea te whakahingi ki toi te kupu tō te mana kai o toi ngā tikanga ko ia te whakaieri hea e whakawātea. Au me hui e.